4th meeting of the Portland City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Novick,
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish. Here. Saltzman.
Here.
Hales.
Here. Good morning, everyone. We have a busy council day, so we're happy that you're going to be here to participate in it. We'll have communications items up front where people have signed up to speak on a subject of their choosing this morning. Then we'll follow that with our time certain items and council calendar items. If you're here to speak on a council calendar item, please let our clerk know, and she'll have you on the list of those to testify. We typically allow 3 minutes per person to testify, and at least this morning, I think we'll probably be able to stick with that rather than reducing that amount, just to make sure everyone gets a chance to speak. And speaking of everyone getting a chance to speak, we follow the rules of decorum here, so if you agree with someone and want to indicate your support, feel free to give them a wave of the hand or a thumbs up. And if you disagree with them, feel free to make a polite hand gesture to the negative, but we ask that we not make vocal demonstrations in favor or against our fellow citizens' points of view here so that we get to hear all of them. That's about it in terms of procedure. And let me ask first if there are any other items to be pulled from the consent calendar to the regular calendar. I have 11:32. Any others? Okay, and we'll get to the consent calendar in a little while. We'll start first with communications item 1124.
Request of Peter Natsios to address council regarding the Middle East refugee crisis.
Good morning, welcome.
I'll get those.
Good morning.
Good morning. You just sit here?
Yes, please.
Is this a good volume?
Yeah, you can pull it more directly close to you. That's fine. There you go.
My name is Peter Natsios. I first learned something about the hardships and sorrow of a refugee's life in the person of our maid Zakia when my family was stationed in Beirut in the 1970s. Now I watch images of refugees drowning, trying to reach the Greek islands where I spent part of a summer, and I think of her. We know our worldwide refugee crisis is severe, that Syria and its neighbors are worst affected, that we unintentionally and unfortunately contributed to this tragedy, and that the federal government's plan so far to accept 10,000 Syrians in 2 years is not enough. And we know some Oregonians hold negative stereotypes of these people. For these reasons, we should invest extra attention to planning for refugees from the Middle East, and in taking that opportunity to make our resettlement program the best it can be for all our refugees. So I'm here today as a concerned physician and private citizen to ask that the City of Portland develop an initiative assisting the resettlement and integration of Middle East refugees. My outline offers some ideas for this. In general terms, the initiative can be a statement of who we are, what we want to do, and a plan to achieve it, sponsored and facilitated by Portland City government. One component would be clarification of the existing resettlement process and analysis for possible improvements. For example, the dedicated people who work in this area say there could be better cooperation and coordination of efforts, and that the mismatch between city and county jurisdictions interferes with services. New strategies for housing are needed. Could new resources be identified? What's missing? How can the public help and be engaged? It's not clear. 2 people have told me they'd like to house a refugee family, but don't know how to arrange it. I think our Senators Wyden and Merkley would support an initiative from you. I recently discussed the refugee crisis with their Washington office staff. They thought coming to City Council was a good idea and told me, in essence, we know we need to do more, but first we need a grassroots effort from the local level to tell us what you want, and then we will support it from our side. So we have a window of opportunity here to do something special for our city, our refugees, and the providers who serve them. I hope you can help lead this effort. Please let me know what's possible and anything else I can do. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for a very thoughtful proposal. Thank you. And I hope Rachel Wiggins, who's sitting behind Carla there, if we don't have your contact info already, please make sure we have it. We'll follow up with you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's take item 1125, please.
Request of Charles Johnson to address council regarding review divestment, hashtag BDS and the at 350 PDX goals, Save Trees and Department of Justice USA versus City.
That's a lot to cover in 3 minutes, Charles.
We'll ad-lib a bit and hop around. And also, as you might notice, we'll have excellent coverage of the 350 PDX issue with the following speaker. I think it's important to take a moment, though, for me to appreciate what Dr. Natsios has just said. Right now, in the Middle East, where the U.S. has involved itself largely because of petroleum, in Iraq, mostly in Syria, about 250,000 people have died in the last 5 years of their civil war. And it's certainly a good thing for the city to look at increasing its partnership with ERCO and facilitating families, especially that specifically want to sponsor refugees from some of the fallout from our political decisions in the Mideast, Syria and Iraq. That is somewhat related to the idea of fossil fuels. And I have some great speechwriters, and they might not know that's their job, but today, 3 of Portland's 5 commissioners will have a chance to impose a small measure of sanity on the fossil fuel insanity this country is engaged in. Some of you may recognize those words and not feel too bad about being called traitors or having betrayed the city, because when you stand for sensible energy policy over the delusion of jobs that are going to hurt our children's future, you're doing the right thing. And so my remarks here are primarily addressed to Commissioner Novick, Mr. Saltzman, and Mr. Fish, that you will see the light and power it with solar and wind energy, and not oppose. That we'll actually get a unanimous vote from this council to say that we're going to focus on energy that's a better decision for our children. We're not going to get a few fossil fuel current jobs at the price of climate chaos later. So I hope that when this issue comes back in the afternoon, you'll be frequently and fervently contacted by your constituents who will take a different position than the Oregonian's editorial board, which is so often out of touch with people who probably aren't its customers anymore. The other issues that were mentioned is the ongoing struggle for the best in policing. Recently, I hope most of our city has been dismayed by the unfortunate decision of Darrell Turner, the Portland Police Association president, to mock Black lives, even though he himself is a Black city employee, and place a billboard on Salmon Street right across from the Black Lives Matter banner of First Unitarian Church. And that's another issue that I hope citizens will fervently and frequently contact you about, is making sure that our police are equitably dealing with all citizens in a nonviolent way, minimally violent way. Every once in a while there are extreme incidents where absurd, but I think we've seen an improvement, and I hope that y'all will continue the pressure so that soon we can have a year with no people killed by police and no police dying in the line of duty. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, item 1126.
Request of Mia Reback to address council regarding climate change.
Good morning. Come on up.
Thank you all for having me here today. It's going to be a really exciting day with lots of discussion of climate change at Council. Climate activists, elected officials, and ordinary citizens were galvanized this summer when Pope Francis released his encyclical on climate change and poverty. In it, he lays out the many arguments for immediate and ambitious climate action, including the moral case for why leaders must act. And I agree. We all have a moral responsibility to stop hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people from suffering from the impacts of climate change, and to try to prevent some of the worst catastrophes known to humankind, like 30 to 50% of species potentially going extinct in the coming century. But I'm here to use the time this morning not to talk about the moral case to act on climate, but the economic case. Because in the days of climate chaos, fossil fuels are bad for business. Fossil fuels are some of the most heavily subsidized companies in the world. And without those subsidies, they would not have that same competitive edge over renewable energy. But it's not just that government gives them a handout every single day to continue their polluting business. It's that they, like other industries, don't have to pay for their external costs. Pollution, things like that. These social costs, as they are called, get picked up by government to pay for. That's the cost that the city of Portland is going to have to pay out as climate change impacts people here today. A really great study was done by a think tank called Resources for the Future, in which they looked at what would happen to our electricity sector if we actually included these social costs of carbon. And they found out that when you factor in the true cost of fossil fuels, our electricity sector would not burn any coal by 2035, and we would transition away from all natural gas in that decade as well. That's how bad fossil fuels are. If we actually priced them, we wouldn't burn them. Not only does it not really make sense to burn these fuels, but the impacts of climate change are wreaking havoc already on our economy, and it's projected the lost productivity around the world will be astronomical. Crop yields will decline, workers work less hard when they're overheated and freezing cold in superstorms, and that means our global economy and our global output will decline in the coming decades. And it's not just that. We also have to worry about stranded assets. When we leave fossil fuels in the ground to address climate change, existing fossil fuel infrastructure, which could include new projects if we build them, will become stranded, and a city like Portland can get stuck footing the bill for another company going out of business because climate change is bad. Fossil fuel companies have been actively deceiving the debate on climate change for decades, and as a recent study came out last week, ExxonMobil has been actively deceiving the US government for decades on the human impacts of climate change, creating a false debate. I hope today that this debate can end in Portland and we can take a strong stand to address climate change, stop investing in this harmful economy, and really lead the way for a new future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, one more, 1127, except I think that's not going to be read this morning. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, then we can take up our consent calendar. And again, I had one item pulled to regular, which is 1132. Unless there are any others, then let's vote on the balance of the consent calendar.
Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, time certain, 1128.
Proclaim November 2015 to be Public Art Month in Portland.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask our honored guests to come forward. Eloise Damrosch, Regional Arts and Culture Council Executive Director, Kristen Calhoun, Public Art Manager, and we have two local artists with us, Garrick Imatani and Yoon Hee Choi. Welcome. And colleagues, 2015 is a big year for the arts in our community, from the sculptures along our downtown bus mall to murals in East Portland. Public art helps make Portland a vibrant place to call home. So this morning, I'm proud to read a proclamation that the mayor is issuing today. Whereas on April 10th, 1980, Portland City Council unanimously passed a new Percent for Art program, creating a permanent funding source for public art. And whereas 35 years later, the city of Portland is celebrating the collective impact and power of our public art. And whereas the Regional Arts and Culture Council manages Portland's public art program and collection, integrating a wide range of public art into spaces throughout our community. And whereas the citizens of Portland now own a public art collection of more than 1,400 pieces of art, reflecting our diversity of cultures, artistic disciplines, and points of view. And whereas the collection is open and accessible to all through the walking tour brochure, a guide to Portland public art, a public art PDX smartphone app, and a comprehensive online database. Whereas the tradition of a strong public art advisory committee has helped enrich our landscape by selecting artwork from hundreds of renowned local, national, and international artists. And whereas 2015 is a big year for for art in Portland, including the 35th anniversary of Percent for Art, the 30th anniversary of the Visual Chronicle of Portland, the 30th birthday of our most recognized piece of art, Portlandia, the 20th anniversary of the Regional Arts and Culture Council, and the 10th anniversary of the Public Art Murals Program. It's quite a mouthful. And whereas the City of Portland renews its dedication to supporting public art that celebrates our culturally diverse communities, enhances the built environment, and contributes to the spirit of Portland. Now, therefore, I, Charlie Hales, Mayor of the City of Portland, Oregon, the City of Roses, do hereby proclaim November 2015 to be Public Art Month in Portland and to encourage all residents to observe this month. And now I'm pleased to turn the program over to Eloise, who's going to tell us more about our visionary public arts programs. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor Hales, City Commissioners. I know you're having a complicated and heavy-duty day today, so we're happy to be here to shed a little art light into your busy day. Before I turn the microphone over to Kristen Calhoun, who's going to show you a PowerPoint, I just wanted to introduce you to our public arts staff who are here today to celebrate with us, and I'd like them to stand up and be recognized.
Good morning. Thank you for your work.
And we have one more who's up in Seattle sharing her expertise with our colleagues up there on a panel today. So it is indeed a busy year for Portland and Portland's public art, and it's wonderful to be able to celebrate all of this with you. And we'll be seeing you, as Kristen will remind you later on, at a big celebration here at the end of the month. So without I think anything else, I'll turn it over to Kristen Calhoun, who's one of our public art managers.
Thank you, Commissioner Hales and Commissioners. I'm sorry, Mayor Hales and Commissioners.
And they're done that.
That's from, yeah, I know. Great. I know it's not really Throwback Thursday, but I'm going to share with you a little throwback video of our dear Portlandia.
Was toasted by a crowd of several thousand, and the architect of the building on which she now sits. Dalton Tananaka reports. Admirers gave her flowers to hold. The deli across the street offered an edible tribute. The 6-ton, 38-foot-tall copper statue is definitely the toast of the town.
I'm very excited as as we all are today. It's a fantastic day, and isn't she beautiful?
The dedication culminated 3 years of work for sculptor Raymond Caskey, who modeled the statue's face after his wife Sherry. It also made critics of the Portland building feel better about the use of public money for artistic architecture. Michael Graves says the structure he designed was never really complete without Portlandia.
Well, I think it's much better with it, absolutely. And it was originally conceived with it, and now that the city is seeing fit to complete the building through 1% art, it's a great day for all of us.
Portlandia, I dedicate you to all the citizens of the city.
Sculpture, I think, should be a smooth jolt, and this is my toast to the city of Portland and to Michael Graves' Portland building.
Arts Commission members say Portlandia is the perfect example of how public money can be used for artistic works, creations that will last long after the last dollar is spent. In downtown Portland, Dalton Tananaka, Channel 2 News.
We just couldn't resist sharing that with you because it's sort of a unique blast from the past.
And we only had to buy the statue once.
Yeah. Right. Your 1% was very well spent.
I don't know, Mayor. Have we had an analysis of whether Portlandia is seismically sound?
I think so. She's got a big block of concrete underneath her.
Former Mayor Bud Clark had the last word at the birthday party a couple weeks ago when he said that Portlandia has held up better than the building.
Yes, she
And
has.
I think we all agree with that.
So we're here today to celebrate Portland's public art. And of course, coming to the current stage of Portland's public art wasn't an accident. We had citizens who were giving artwork to Portland over time. One of the best known, of course, was Stephen Skidmore's gift to the city. And of course, the inscription at the bottom, we all know very well. I don't know what, uh-oh. All right, technical problems. Let me close this.
Never know where that mouse
All
might
right.
go. There we go.
Yeah. Oh,
There you go.
okay, sorry. So, as I was saying, the inscription at the bottom of Skidmore Fountain, "Good citizens are the riches of a city," is something that's really important to our public art program because citizens are always involved in our decision-making process. So, from the older works to the relatively more contemporary works that the city did in the 70s, and then in the 80s, of course, Portlandia and the passage of the Percent for Art program. So from parks to the Fire Bureau, to the Police Bureau, to transportation and other bureaus, we are always looking at what is the context of public art in this setting and how can public art give meaning, delight, all sorts of different aspects to our community. We also oversee the city's donations. Artist Anna Fiddler made this donation. Some of the more well-known donations that you probably know of are Vera Katz over on the East Bank Esplanade, the Elephant. So we shepherd those projects for you as well. And we work on partnerships. This particular partnership was with our sister city of Sapporo. And of course, we take care of all the city's public art. As Nick mentioned, it's actually over 1,600 if you include all the portable works. So we work hard to take care of that. And we work hard to establish new programs like the Murals program that now celebrates 10 years. This is a piece from this summer. One of the things we're also always trying to do is to create new ways for artists and the public to intersect. So one of the ways we did that was to set up an artist residency program, and Garrick Imatani is here to say a few words about his experience as one of the artists in residence.
Thanks. Hi. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Good morning. So from 2013 to 2015, I was a joint artist in residence with poet Kaya Sand within the city archives. And this opportunity was, as Kristen said, part of the Intersections program, which is funded in a way similar to a public art commission. However, rather than produce a single standalone sculpture, the program allows artists like myself to produce public programming and to invest in the research of a site or community for a more extensive period of time. And so as a result, Kai and I were able to look at 30 years of surveillance documents collected by the Portland Police on different activist groups, which led to creating art, poetry, performances, lectures, and collaborations with other artists and citizens that responded to this research-driven process. Part of this process entailed interviewing former activists who were surveyed and producing artworks that have been included in several exhibitions in Portland, as well as nationally at the Blaffer Museum of Art in Houston, Texas, the Art Design and Architecture Museum at the University of California at Santa Barbara, and YNKB Gallery in Copenhagen, Denmark. So, in other words, the project's rooted in Portland's vibrant and important political history, but has physically extended itself to reach audiences in other cities and countries. On a personal level, I can say that since this project was my first public project that was funded, it represented an unprecedented opportunity for myself as an artist. And in many ways, the commission was a dream project. On the most basic and fundamental level, it allowed the time and headspace to think deeply, look into less known political histories, and present our discoveries to very different audiences than the typical gallery or museum goer. In terms of financial support, so often as artists, we spend a significant portion of our time self-funding and producing projects, and it would have been impossible to make the works I did through the residency at the same level, quality, and diversity of material exploration without the financial and administrative support of the Regional Arts and Culture Council. Lastly, I just want to say that from this project, I've been able to see how my work will continue to fit in dialogue with the public, and I'm now trying to pursue opportunities to continue working in the public realm in a way that could result in either a more permanent outdoor piece or interior installation. So in that way, the residencies obviously shape my experience of public art in a positive way that encourages me to do more. Also, I should mention that as a teacher that's been involved in academia for the last 10 years, I've attended arts conferences across the country, and the reputation of RAC's public art program precedes them on a national level. For those of you that might not be aware, providing models for programming rather than only permanently cited works within the context of Percent for Art is somewhat atypical and very forward-thinking. So when I run into arts professionals in other cities that administer public art, they're all familiar with the efforts happening in Portland and talk excitedly about the possibilities being pursued here. So I want to commend RAC and tell them to keep up the good work, and thanks for believing in mine.
Thank you. Good morning.
And actually, I have a couple
Sorry.
more slides to show
Okay.
you, and then we'll introduce Yoon Hee. So we also manage portable works. Most of you have portable works in your offices and throughout the buildings, in city and county offices. We also have the Visual Chronicle of Portland, which also celebrates an anniversary year this year. So the Visual Chronicle was started by artist Hank Pander and chronicles over time the development of our city. The installation space across the street, I hope you got a chance to see this installation, which came down last night for Dia de los Muertos, was a space that Yoon Hee did work in, and Yoon Hee will talk a little bit about her experience of doing artwork in the installation space. This was an excavation of 20 years of installation space.
Well, thank you, Kristen, and it is a great honor to be here. And so briefly, I want to tell you about my work, Stratoscape. I didn't have that much installation experience before this Stratoscape, but I knew that the artist selection process of this program is just only based on the proposal, not on the artist portfolio. I decided to try. So without any particular project in my mind, I went to walk through. In that meeting, I learned that this program started in 1994, and since then, 136 artists had installed their work in the same space in Portland building. And Keith, who runs this program, mentioned there are 100 layers of paints under the surface from previous artists' work. at that moment my project started. So what I wanted it was to rebuild. I wanted to rebuild the 20 years installation history by excavating those remains from previous artists' work. As I dig in more, I found many vibrant color layers, and I wanted to know more about each color's actual installation. So every night I searched the Rex Digital Archive. I ended up to make this visual index to share my discovery with my audience. At one point, I was scared, thinking of, wow, I'm vandalizing Portland building. Can I really do that? But once the proposal was selected, the RAC was fully behind my idea, and all the staff members wholeheartedly helped me to complete my work to a very fine level of detail. As a studio-based artist, this first public project caused me to rethink about who is my audience and what kind of work I wanted to pursue, and also how I approach this very site-specific installation as an artist. I think all the public art is a benefit to general public and also artists, but this particular unique program is a truly wonderful opportunity to any artist in Portland who wants to explore their potential beyond their boundary. So I want to thank you again to RAC for giving me a wonderful opportunity, and I hope you council will proudly continue to support RAC and all the public art projects in Portland.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yoon-hee. Actually, I have a few more. And then behind the scenes, one of the things that we are really proud about is that we have excellent data. Now, that doesn't maybe sound exciting, but our excellent data is what allows us to do these amazing public art searches, so that so that any citizens can, through the website, search for public art. If they want to know where a specific piece is located, it pops up. We have been able to develop a phone app, and all of that is because we have this fantastic data. And then we biannually, triannually refresh our public art walking tour, which is part of the downtown core work. And then to share with you just a few things that we have upcoming, some of the bigger projects that we have upcoming. We're always working on new projects. The Selwood Bridge will happen in spring of 2016. Artist Mick Young Kim has done these strata poles. And we have 2 new parks projects in East Portland that we're really excited about. Artist Maurizio Robolino was part of the design team for Beach Park, and artist Horatio Hunyan Law was part of the design team for Gateway Park. And then, starting next week, you will see a color explosion in City Hall here as we mount an exhibit of Portland's public art. And on Thursday, November 19th, we hope you will all join us in celebrating our public art. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, we're going to take a picture in a second, if we could. I just want to offer just a further observation. I hope everyone can join us on the 19th. I think RAC demonstrated when we celebrated Portlandia's 30th that they really know how to throw a party. And the public art that's coming to City Hall will actually be dispersed throughout the building. So it won't just be downstairs in the atrium, it'll be on all 3 floors. And it'll include some of the best pieces from our collection. As the proud parent of 2 children, I've learned that you can never pick favorites among your children. But we have 1,600 works of art, and I just want to observe that probably everyone up here has a piece that's special. And for me, it's probably the Lee Kelly collection. And I think we have the largest collection of Lee Kelly sculpture of anybody, maybe outside of Susan Hammer. And whether it's the Lee Kelly that's up in the Rose Garden or the Lee Kelly that's in front of Big Pink, some of his, or now the Big Pink, the Lee Kelly that's in front of PNCA, his great masterworks are spread throughout our community. When Steve and I dedicated the improvements on Division Street not long ago, RAC had installed new art around Division Street. That won a national award, that particular piece. When we opened the fields, there was some public art that was noted in your handout. I particularly appreciate that you included Fire Station 21. Commissioner Salzman dedicated Fire Station 21, and I think the public art on the front of the building was just genius of integrating art into a structure. And then I just want to close by noting the murals, because one of the murals in this city features Jim Thorpe. And it was very interesting when the Jim Thorpe mural hit, all of a sudden social media started blowing up because lots of people in our community had some connection to Jim Thorpe. It turns out that in 1921, he actually played baseball in the old Thurman Street baseball stadium. And he was one of the greatest athletes in the history of this country, but he played multiple sports, and he was, for a while, a professional baseball player. The Native American community honors him because, of course, he went to Carlisle, and he was one of the greatest Native American athletes. I was struck when I saw the mural because in 1911, my grandfather lined up against him in the gridiron for a national championship football game, a collegiate football game. And so my grandfather played against the greatest Native American football player in our history. But that mural sparked a dialogue in our community about Jim Thorpe and his history and our legacy. And it was a very beautiful thing. And so it reminded me how the arts inspire us and challenge us and bring us together. And I think one of the things as the Arts Commissioner I'm especially proud of is the public investment in this collection. The people of Portland invested in this collection, and we have a collection that's the envy of cities our size around the country. And we're fortunate, Mayor, to have a custodian of that collection that cherishes it on our behalf. So today we celebrate that collection, but we thank RAC for their tremendous work.
You're here. Thank you all. Want to take a picture?
Yeah, let's bring the team up.
Please.
Smile for Jenny. No flash. Right, Ellen? Thank you all very much. Thanks.
Yeah. I start, then, yeah.
Good work. Thank you very much. Okay, it is 10:15, even though our clock says 11:15. And we will move on to item 1129.
Adopt the recommendations contained within the Tryon-Stevens Headwaters Neighborhood Street Plan as the guiding strategy for Portland Bureau of Transportation and Bureau of Environmental Services efforts to complete the transportation networks and stormwater system within the plan area.
Commissioner Novick, would you like to lead off?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Before Commissioner Fish and I introduce this item, we should recognize Denver Igarta from PBOT and Naomi Tsurumi from BES for their hard work. Thank you so much for all the outreach you've done to make this project a success. Colleagues, this is a joint resolution between PBOT and BES, the two most powerful bureaus in the city. And I think I can say that both Commissioner Fish and I are very proud of the work our bureaus have done together. This plan lays the foundation for cross-bureau collaboration and for creative thinking about both street and stormwater infrastructure. These infrastructure improvements are normally expensive. However, terrain and soil conditions in southwest Portland often make an expensive project that much more expensive. This plan moves beyond a one-size-fits-all approach to put improvements on local streets within reach for property owners and for the city. It allows greater flexibility to make improvements more affordable and more compatible with the natural setting. This approach to addressing both street and stormwater deficiencies can be applied to areas with similar challenges outside this study area. The Tryon-Stevens plan complements unfunded TSP projects on busy streets like Capitol Highway and Barber Boulevard, which will remain the focus of future safety improvements. It extends safe street connections into neighborhoods, offering residents the option to walk or bicycle to nearby destinations, leaving space on our roads and in commercial areas for others who need to drive. Commissioner Fish.
Thank you very much. And Mayor and colleagues, one of the most rewarding things that's happened to me since Commissioner Novick joined the council and Leah Treat took over PBOT is the deepening of the relationship between these two bureaus. And it turns out we do a lot of work together, and that means there's a lot of opportunities for coordination and communication. And I'm pleased to report that the relationship is very strong and that there is a lot of work being done behind the scenes to better align our respective missions and values and to coordinate projects, particularly with an eye to minimizing impacts on the communities we serve. I'm particularly proud of the work of Denver and Naomi. We'll hear from them in a moment, but now I will read the script that I was handed. Although the difference between my script and Steve's is the font is 10 times bigger. And I'll try to be as spontaneous as I can with this script. In areas like Southwest, development needs to be sensitive to the terrain, natural hydrology, water quality, native habitat, and biological communities. The plan advances new techniques to control, convey, and reduce pollutants in the stormwater, and a creative approach to managing stormwater runoff from multiple blocks. The plan engaged Southwest neighbors representing the community within the plan area, including those actively involved with the city, as well as groups not always represented. This is the first substantial collaboration between BES and PBOT at the neighborhood scale. Working together in that way allowed us to match tools that work for streets and stormwater and to see and understand better where our bureaus have mutual interests. And now I'll turn it over to Denver. Carla?
Thank you, Commissioner Fish. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Denver Igarda. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Portland Bureau of Transportation, and I served as the project manager for this plan.
Hi, my name is Naomi Surumi. I'm with the Bureau of Environmental Services, and I am a staff lead on this plan for environmental services. And we are very excited to present to you the recommendations of this unique joint planning effort between our bureaus to address persistent challenges to close gaps in both the street and stormwater systems in Southwest Portland. This work was supported by a grant from the Oregon Department of Transportation's Transportation and Growth Management Program. So Tryon-Stevens is the third neighborhood street plan developed by PBOT to address street connectivity in areas with significant deficiencies in basic infrastructure, such as sidewalks and paved streets. The map shows streets with existing sidewalks citywide. These plans will serve as models for surrounding neighborhoods with similar conditions. The Cully Plan was adopted in 2012. The Division Midway Plan in East Portland was adopted by Council just last month. Following the Cully Plan effort, the Street by Street initiative introduced more flexible curbless street options for low-traffic residential streets. At the same time, Environmental Services has been working to implement plans for the Tryon Creek and the Stevens Creek watersheds. Soil conditions and topography in Southwest make it difficult to talk about street improvements without talking about stormwater at the same time. So transportation and and Environmental Services decided to jointly undertake this plan for the Tryon-Stevens area to bring together creative solutions and create a tailored strategy for dealing with access and stormwater in the context of Southwest. So we started by developing a public involvement plan, looking to the examples of Cully and Division Midway as models. The public involvement plan identified community stakeholders and outreach activities based on demographic data for the study area. We translated key materials based on Portland Public Schools data into Spanish and Somali. We formed a diverse stakeholder working group that included representatives from neighborhood associations and business associations, and then also from groups such as the African Youth Community Organization, Kesser Israel Congregation, and resident of Stevens Creek Crossing, which is one of the Home Forward affordable housing communities in the plan area. The project was kicked off with a booth and a walking tour at Southwest Sunday Parkways. It was in September of 2014. And Stevens Creek Crossing served as a venue for our two public open house events. The first open house event had over 70 community members attending. The second had more than 30. And we conducted surveys at and after both open house events, both on paper and online. We also held a special workshop with youth who live at the Stevens Creek Crossing apartment complex, where kids drew maps of places in their neighborhood and the routes that they used to walk there. We did presentations to other community groups such as the Multnomah Village Business Association and the Portland Commission on Disability, and both of those groups were represented on our community working group as well. And we maintained a project website. And we also gathered a lot of information from city staff across both of our bureaus and Planning and Sustainability and Parks through several meetings and workshops. So the Southwest natural setting is what attracts many people to live in this part of the city, but the hilly topography, poorly draining soils, sensitive natural resources, and streams limit street connectivity and constrain opportunities within the right-of-way to make improvements to enhance access or manage stormwater. Stevens and Tryon Creeks are two of the few remaining open streams in the city that flow to the Willamette River. In the early days, major transportation corridors in Southwest often followed the landscape. There were two commuter rail corridors along key flat routes that are current-day Barber, Bertha, and Multnomah Boulevards. Routes like Boone's Ferry and Taylor's Ferry led to ferry crossings at the river. Roads were built to get dairy products from the farms to local markets, such as Hoffman Road, which is the current-day Vermont Street. And neighbors used a system of trails to walk routes not connected by paved streets. As the area was platted for development, a grid pattern was often applied without regard to natural features such as streams and sloping terrains. The two images on the left are examples. The top left image is from the Lair Hill area, and then the bottom left is from our plan area. And these illustrate the issue with applying a connectivity standard in the Southwest context that makes more sense in a flat, less constrained neighborhood. In the bottom left and the right-hand photos, the yellow star shows the current location of the Burlingame Fred Meyers, and it's situated over Stevens Creek. So you can see in the example that in 1932 and 1940, there was a forested area, and Stevens Creek runs through there. And then in the bottom right, you can see that Stevens Creek is piped under Fred Meyer and I-5. So you can see from this example that past development often removes sensitive habitat, vegetation, and put streams in pipes. So when on a watershed scale, development leads to increases in impervious surface, which increases surface runoff and leads to problems such as water pollution, flooding, erosion, and degraded stream health and wildlife habitat.
So our plan seeks to address street and stormwater connectivity by fostering both healthy walk sheds and healthy watersheds. And by walk sheds, these are places that offer residents safe options to walk, bicycle, to local shops and destinations that are within a short walkable distance. This focus provides the opportunity to translate the concepts of complete neighborhoods that are identified in the Portland Plan and the Comprehensive Plan into a Southwest context. Healthy watersheds means when additional impervious surface is added as the result of development, that it doesn't result in negative impacts to hydrology, water quality, habitat, and biological communities. And so we're trying to achieve the objectives and the values of both bureaus. We initiated our outreach process by asking neighbors where they go in the neighborhood and how they get there, specifically how they walk and bicycle to local destinations. Often the most popular routes for neighbors used a combination of both busier and lower traffic, quiet streets. The busier streets are important because they're often the flatter routes, the most direct routes, the routes where destinations are. However, neighborhood streets serve as important links for neighbors to reach their homes, bus stops, parks, schools, and other local destinations. When destinations can be reached safely by foot or bike, residents are given an option to choose not to drive if they like. And this reduces the pressure on the busy streets and as well as parking in our main streets and commercial areas. So based on our public outreach, we identified concentrations of destinations, and these are shown in the bottom left map as yellow circles. So these are areas where we have a number of destinations where we have the possibility to shift more trips from neighbors to walking and biking. We worked with our community working group to identify the flat routes, the most direct routes, and also the lowest traffic routes to connect and link these centers. On the top right, you can see there were two corridors that we identified that were missing public right-of-way. And so the plan recommends adding future connections in these two locations to the Southwest Master Street Plan, which was originally adopted in 2001, and that's shown on the bottom right map. The plan also identifies kind of the key routes that serve people walking and biking in the neighborhood. These are on the left map shown in purple and on the right map shown in brown. The map on the left shows Southwest trails, safe routes to schools, city walkways and city bikeways, basically the planned pedestrian networks in our city. Our plan recommends adding a few connections to fill in the gaps that were identified through our outreach. The map on the right also shows where we have gaps in our stormwater system, and these are shown as red lines. Those are essentially streets that don't have a stormwater facility. The map on the right also shows the darker areas, which are areas where we have concentrations of complaints about stormwater in the study area. So where our gaps in our networks overlap, those are shown in yellow on the map on the right. And those are locations where we have potential for our bureaus to collaborate when we're doing infrastructure projects. These two photos are common types of streets that are illustrating the challenges that we face when we're introducing infrastructure in this part of the city. Most of the streets in this study area actually are paved, so we had almost 88% of our streets are paved. However, nearly two-thirds of them lack a sidewalk. We asked in our surveys at public events as well as online, what is it that people would like to see improved on streets that are already paved? And where improvements needed, the top two responses were adding a sidewalk or dealing with the drainage for stormwater. This was followed by responses such as street trees and traffic calming and bicycle improvements. And all of those preceded actually adding sidewalks on both sides of the street. And as you can see, from the sloping topography and the drainage, there's a lot of challenges in building to our traditional standard. We also asked folks, what should we be preserving when we're making improvements? The top three responses that we received were to preserve the low traffic speeds, as well as the natural landscape and mature trees, and the unique character of the street. So the plan includes a number of recommendations to form a tailored strategy for dealing with addressing our system gaps in the study area. But the two primary products of our partnership were a street typology and a process for identifying suitable street and stormwater concepts that manifested as a flow chart. The street typology allows us to define characteristics of different streets, and we use 6 factors to do that. Traffic volumes, adjacent land use, whether it's connecting destinations, whether it's on our pedestrian or bicycle networks, and whether there are natural features, high-value natural resources, or steep slopes. So based on those factors, we were able to identify different categories of streets, which help us to know where we have more flexibility. Busier streets in commercial areas and near important destinations have less flexibility and should be built to a higher standard. However, neighborhood streets in quiet areas provide a bit more flexibility. And also in natural areas, we should be flexible to preserve the valuable resources that are there. So with our typology, we also developed a flow chart, and the flow chart was a way for us to have a series of additional questions to determine what suitable concepts there are for improvements to street and stormwater. So based on the typology, the flow chart asks a series of questions about the street conditions and suggests suitable street improvement options that relate to the context of that typology. And then there's a series of stormwater questions, which does the same, results in suitable stormwater concepts. The two illustrations on the bottom are examples of the combinations of the street and stormwater improvements. And so we've had street by street in place for a couple of years, but this is the first time we've actually combined those with kind of stormwater facilities for curbless streets. And so the one on the left is a shared street, a separated street, which has a pavement and a sidewalk on one side, and it's combined with a surface conveyance swale for the stormwater conveyance. So these are simply concepts to illustrate. Specific designs would be the result of project level development with engineering and survey and additional outreach to the community. The flexibility that we've developed within this plan, it outlines a way for us to allow improvements to be made within the right-of-way, both as a result of private development, local improvement districts, and public investment to more closely match the context of the street context, as well as hopefully to see improvements occur sooner due to lower costs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Other questions for staff?
Very nicely done. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Steve, you're going to tee up the next panel?
Yes.
Vice Chair, I do have a question, and that was, how did you decide on the study area boundaries?
So we used we started with the watersheds actually, and we used Tryon and Stevens headwaters areas to identify kind of where the boundary is. Then we looked at an area that was confined by major streets, and in this case it was Capitol Highway on the west and Taylor's Ferry on the east. And by focusing on a smaller geographic area, it allows us to collect a lot of data on that smaller area. And so we collected a lot of traffic counts that were done on local streets. So that's the general approach that we took, and it allows us to kind of see some areas that have better connectivity, more infrastructure improvements, and then some areas that were severely deficient.
So is there any thought of continuing a similar study to the south part of the Tryon Creek watershed?
Yeah, this plan was developed from the start with the intent that the tools and approaches could be applied to other areas of similar contexts, specifically surrounding neighborhoods in Southwest Portland. And the tools themselves today actually can be applied. We focused on this smaller area as a pilot, but I think the tools themselves can be translated to other areas outside the study area.
I think it's an absolutely terrific study. I feel a little like the folks in Centennial and Pleasant Valley when we talk about Lenson Gateway as being East Portland. That's the neighborhood to the south, which actually has Markham Elementary School, which is not in the study area. It's the only Title I school on the west side. It would have been really nice to have had the study, maybe even just taking in the Falling Creek tributary, not necessarily Arnold Creek and the others to the south, would have allowed more discussions of the equity of how the children at the mosques access the cool stuff that's further to the north.
Good point. Other questions, comments? Thank you both. I think you have a panel ready, Commissioner Fish.
Yes, we do. We have Liz Safran, Lewis and Clark professor, Multnomah Neighborhood Association rep, community working group member, who's going to talk about the importance of solutions that are sensitive to the natural setting. Sue Stahl, Markham resident, PCOD rep, will talk about access issues for those with disabilities. Trudy Raz Frengel, neighbor and descendant of the Raz family, will talk about the importance of solutions to respect the historic and existing natural neighborhood setting. And Marianne Fitzgerald of Sweeney will talk about neighborhood priorities.
Liz, before you start, I just have to tell you that I got an email the other day from friends of mine on the East Coast, and they had come to Portland with their son who was looking for a college. They were shopping for colleges. And they fell in love with Portland, and they fell in love with Lewis and Clark because of the environmental programs of the college, and he's applied for early decision there. So
Oh,
I was
great.
thrilled for them.
That's always good to hear. Thank you. So I'll just introduce myself again. I'm Liz Safran. I represented the Multnomah Neighborhood Association on the community working group for the Tryon-Stevens Plan. And I am an associate professor of geological science at Lewis and Clark College in the environmental studies program. I wanted to share a few thoughts about the process that gave birth to this plan. First, I was struck throughout by how inclusive a process it was and how responsive the team was to community input. From October 2014 to June 2015, there were 4 meetings of the community working group and 3 opportunities for public input. There was a roll and stroll event in the study area, and there were 2 open houses at the Stevens Creek Community Center. And all events were sort of a good mix of short presentations about the group's progress since the last gathering, and hands-on exercises to try out the concepts that the team leaders were developing, as well as opportunities for feedback from the public in the form of survey responses, all of which were always summarized at the beginning of the next meeting. Second, the collaboration between PBOT and BES at the planning and design stages, and not just at the implementation stage, serves as, I think, a great model for what better planning could look like in this city, which is known for planning. The street typology and design option flowchart that they developed provides a structured approach to joint planning that can, and I hope will, be adopted not just in the Tryon-Stevens Creek headwaters, but throughout other similar parts of the city once it's been field tested. The environmental benefits of this plan and of a joint planning process across agencies at the design stage are really significant. Most notably, it should permit smaller paved footprints, which lead to less stormwater runoff and greater preservation of trees. This is extremely important in Southwest Portland in particular, where hilly topography and soils with low infiltration rates make stormwater management a real challenge. The more that we can prevent runoff and keep infiltration capacity high by preserving trees, the better able the city will be to meet stormwater management goals that help preserve environmental amenities and reduce impacts on the few daylighted creeks that remain.
I should note that tree preservation is also important for meeting carbon emissions targets. Many of the city's emissions reductions to date have come from energy conservation efforts, and the ongoing loss of mature trees could threaten these gains by increasing the urban heat island effect. That is to say, locally increasing temperatures associated with loss of shading and development of additional surfaces. So for many reasons, planning efforts like this one that reduce paved surfaces and preserve mature trees are really important. In fact, it would, my personal sort of response to this experience of participating on this group is that it would be great if the kind of inter-bureau coordination that was demonstrated in this project could be sort of pushed upstream and extended to the development stage. Of course, bureaus do interact during a development through permitting processes and so on. But this project shows a really kind of unique development of differentiated guidelines that are responsive to local conditions that I think could be inspiring for developing guidelines for location-appropriate development. And the last thing I want to mention is that although this plan deals specifically with sort of smaller streets, lower traffic streets, I saw in the course of the process a lot of concern about those busy streets and interest in seeing those become more bike and pedestrian friendly. And I think this plan is great because it complements the ongoing projects that are sort of have their own budgetary attention and priority, but provides an opportunity to sort of wed those with neighborhood scale projects in a thoughtful and seamless way. So I appreciated participating in this process, and I want to thank both Naomi and Denver for orchestrating such a fine project.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sue Stahl. I'm the Vice Chair of the Portland Commission on Disability and Chair of one of its subcommittees focusing on accessibility in the built environment. During my tenure, I have worked with the city on a number of projects that involve the disability community, such as street design, disabled parking, the ADA transition plan, and now, most recently, the Tyron Stevens plan. I'm here to talk with you today about this plan and share with you why I'm supporting this plan and why you should too. As a resident of Southwest Portland neighborhoods, I am burdened every day with the lack of paved streets, sidewalks, and even curbs in the area. I live in what is called a 20-minute neighborhood. This means shopping, supermarkets, and other resources are within a 20-minute walk of my house. However, due to the poor condition of the road, I cannot even get on my driveway. Not being able to walk down the street severely restricts my access to these neighborhood centers. My 20-minute neighborhood can just as well be a 20-mile neighborhood simply because I cannot navigate the road. Southwest Portland is plagued by roads similar to mine, and they affect everyone, not just me. My neighbor, who uses a walker too, has stumbled on a few occasions walking across the street to get her mail when she first moved in. Sadly, I hardly see her outside anymore and believe she has become a shut-in. I have also seen children walking to and from school in a reasonably busy street or walk in ditches because there are no sidewalks or walk paths. Some of the streets are so narrow due to overgrowth that cars must turn into nearby driveways to let other cars pass through. We even had an issue where cars parked on the side of the road impeded a fire truck from getting to a house. Another issue in my neighborhood deals with drainage. Simply put, there is none. This means when it rains, the water flows where it wants to, downhill, collecting in potholes and unimproved streets, creating lakes in people's yards, and seeping into basements, causing foundation damage. After the downpour this past weekend, I could hear the noise of many wet, dry vacuums. I was one of the lucky ones. I live on a hill. Having to wade through or avoid puddles puts pedestrians at risk. It is hard to describe all the mud, oil, leaves, and who knows what else that collects in these puddles. And you don't know how deep it is until you step in it. And walking into the street to avoid these puddles is just an accident waiting to happen. The Tyrone-Stevenson plan will address both the accessibility issues and water runoff by allowing more options in the street-by-street initiative. Southwest Portland is unique and the topography is very challenging. Roads cannot be paved, sidewalks and walk paths cannot be installed without affecting water runoff. Drainage and pedestrian improvements go hand in hand. Seeing the collaboration of PBOT and BDS tackle these issues has been exciting. Both bureaus have identified and studied the key problems, listened to public feedback, and developed a comprehensive plan. Recommended options include clearing overgrowth and widening the shoulders, allowing for better separation of car and foot traffic, adding vegetation swales or pipes to manage water runoff, improving walking paths by using impervious material, and reducing the speed limit. Because the streets in Southwest vary from paved streets with sidewalks to dirt roads with no walk paths, each street will be handled differently and the design based on residential needs. As I mentioned before, my street needs a lot of help, and I am confident that the Tyrone-Stevenson plan will improve the walkability and control the rainwater, allowing me to have access to my neighborhood and eliminating the need of wet dry-vacs after heavy rains. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a resident of Southwest Portland, and
Just pull that microphone a little closer.
oh, okay.
to you.
I'm
There you go.
sorry. I'm a resident of Southwest Portland, and when I walked in here, I looked at the historic pictures, and I saw, oh my gosh, that's the house that my dad was born in, which I never knew existed here in the city hall. But he did spend some time in the city hall many years ago. So that was a nice welcome. Thank you. When I grew up, our area of Southwest Portland was still mostly Swiss dairy farming country. As children, we walked almost everywhere, through the fields, jumping over cow pies, or on paths which the older generations made. Also, there were lanes or unofficial roads going from one part of the farm to the other. Many other roads were already in existence. Nevada Court became a dedicated street in 1891 and Capitol Hill Road in 1918. Actually, my father, Werner Raz, deeded land for official roads, land from our farm. He wanted to make it easier to get around the farm during his lifetime and to provide for the generations to come. Before 1940, he deeded land for 21st Avenue, Stevens Creek, which is now Rasbach Crossing, and 19th Avenue. In 1952, the day before our Southwest area joined Portland, my dad deeded Caldew Street and 23rd Avenue to Multnomah County so that these right-of-ways would remain for the public use always. Yes, most of these official roads were in our cow fields, or at least near them. As a child, I knew that I had the right to walk on any public right-of-way. During those years, as even now, our Southwest area was filled with fruit trees. Before the dairy farms, the area was an orchard. As children, we'd walk to Multnomah School from kindergarten till 8th grade, eating delicious fruit along the way. It was a paradise of eating. People knew us and we felt like we belonged. We played together and we worked together. Children and sometimes their parents too picked crops for cash: beans, filberts, berries, and so on. I remember one year when the strawberries came early and we had the choice of going to Multnomah School or picking, and probably that was the same choice all over Portland, I suspect. Foot travel was a given. Werner Raz, my father, was by nature a trailblazer and a visionary. In 1936, he was appointed postmaster of Multnomah, and perhaps because of that, he knew of every right-of-way there was or could be. Always he acted in the interest of the community, whether it was to pay back every creditor who had lost money in the old Multnomah Bank, and Walter Raz's cousin did this with him, and his house is where Habitat for Humanity is now, where those houses are, or in creating public streets and trails. Trail making was a lifelong pursuit. His grandfather was a road maker in the Swiss Alps, so maybe trail making and roads were second nature to him. In 1956, the day Wilson High School opened, he completed a trail in Nevada Court right-of-way for high school students. Later, he extended that trail. That trail is now the Rasbach Crossing. My dad worked on that trail for 9 years. The neighbors didn't want the trail, even though it was on public land, and of course, Dad deeded that land anyway. The city of Portland was not ready for urban trails during those years. My father saw this trail as a safe and a beautiful shortcut to the city bus stop and to Reiki School. I think that time Reiki was called Wilson Park Grade School, and Wilson High School. During this time, Don Bach heard my dad talk about his trail and about the existing network of right-of-ways. I think Don's here today. Dad explained that his trail could, by showing a map, that his trail could be extended from Wilson High School all the way to Gabriel Park by using all right-of-ways, and I have that, an official map showing that. When Don retired many years later, Dad just did that. Don became a trail maker. As long as Dad lived, he fought for trail making on unused streets. Yes, in 1984, the day he died, he was talking to a neighbor about building a trail on the 19th Avenue right-of-way, and that's finally going to be completed, thank goodness. Yeah, thanks to Denver and Naomi and others. This neighbor was afraid of people walking by his home because he has children. Yeah, and then that same day, Dad died. But anyway, so I hope he's here listening at this point that I'm in City Hall, right? Recently, this year, I attended 2 community workshops put on by Transportation and BES. We were asked how we would improve Southwest streets. I felt that many streets should remain unimproved. I do agree with you, though, with some of the graveled roads, that the streets should match the neighborhood and its rural character. One kind of street does not fit all. One street that I commented on was a dead-end street with little car traffic, but a lot of foot traffic. It was near a park. The street was a perfect unimproved street except for one flaw. One resident had fenced all the way to the street, preventing pedestrian traffic on the shoulder. I was shocked that he felt that he could do this because the fence was not his land, nor a lot of the land behind the fence. This encroachment needs to be removed. Right now, we live on a dead-end street that is a 30-foot right-of-way. Since only a few cars use it each day, we get a tremendous amount of pedestrian traffic. No street improvement is needed. Our unimproved street is ideal. Because there is little traffic, the gravel is not worn down. Also, we've made full use of the portion of the right-of-way on our side of the street. In that 15 feet, we've put in 2 benches and some tree stumps, plus flowers and vegetation, for people to enjoy, and socialize. It's a very happy environment. The land is used for community purposes. Concerning the Tryon Streets Plan, I'm pleased that it takes into account the unique character of the Southwest neighborhoods. It addresses the many ways neighbors travel. The plan recommendations help to ensure that the right-of-ways will remain accessible to the public, and the plan offers safe routes for walkers. It also recommends that when improvements are made, the improvements match the historic and the natural settings of our neighborhoods. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mary Ann Fitzgerald is.
Just
batted
before you
clean
go
up.
on,
One more question.
no, I just wanted to comment, Trudy, when you and I talked after the Rasbach crossing opening,
Right,
you
yeah.
told me about your family deeding the land for what's now called Custer Park. And I want
Right,
you to know that
yeah.
Commissioner Novick has initiated a
Yeah.
process to discuss whether we should keep it that way. So
Wow.
go to the Multnomah Neighborhood Association and participate.
Yay. One thing about Custer Park is on the bottom, well, we owned until Miles, I mean, that was part of our farm, but there where it's really swampy, we had a little pond there, yeah, where we would swim right on next to Capitol Road, yeah. But, yeah, that's terrific. Thank you. Yay.
Marianne, welcome.
Okay, good morning. My name is Mary Ann Fitzgerald, and I'm here representing the Southwest Neighborhoods Coalition of 17 neighborhoods in Southwest Portland. Sweeney wants to express its very strong support for the Tryon-Stevens Creek Plan. And we want to particularly thank the excellent staff work of Denver and Naomi. I work with a lot of staff in both bureaus, and they did a fabulous job in putting this plan together, and it's a really, really good product. We especially appreciate them laying the foundation for improved coordination between the bureaus on these two issues that affect neighborhood livability, and probably streets and the environment are the two most passionate topics you could engage with anyone in Southwest Portland. We strongly support the recommendations to coordinate between bureaus to address both street and stormwater gaps in Southwest Portland. And yesterday, as I sat through the TSP work session, I noticed that nobody mentioned stormwater at all when we were discussing transportation. But for those of us on the ground, we know that the right-of-way has to handle both the water and the people. And, we have to make sure that we have room for everybody. And this plan really is a really good step in that direction. We know we commended the BES for doing the Stevens Stormwater Systems Plan about 2 years ago. It was a great landmark study that led to this study as well. But we also know that the other watersheds have watershed plans and not specifically stormwater plans. And I've observed over the years that some of the limits on what we can do in the transportation system are limited by how we manage the water that flows off those surfaces. So I wanted to especially thank the staff for committing to a proposed pilot Tryon Creek Headwaters Stormwater Systems alternative analysis that would help manage stormwater off Capitol Highway in between Multnomah and Taylor's Ferry and help it make it more feasible to actually get that project built. So thank you. We had a lot of discussions at Sweeney about connectivity and the difference between busy streets and neighborhood streets. We supported the recommendations to close the gaps in the Urban Trails Plan and in the Southwest Master Street Plan in the area. But we also recognize that busy streets tend to be flatter. As Denver said, they followed the ridge line so that you didn't have to go up and down, but you could go directly to access transit. That's where the transit lines are, to access the commercial areas, the schools, and the parks, as noted in the typology. But as many of you may know, the city has issued thousands and thousands of waivers of remonstrance, which did not require developers to develop any infrastructure on those streets. And again, with that yin and yang of local streets and busy streets, we can pretty much walk on the local streets with potholes and everything else. But the busy streets are dangerous. And so we really want to no longer allow the waivers of remonstrance on the busiest streets where we need the infrastructure the most to access our destinations. We also recognize the plan recommendations for widened shoulders as an interim solution. And I emphasize interim because there's a few of them near my house where traffic's going 40 miles an hour, zooming right by, cars are right behind you. It's a really scary place to walk on a widened shoulder. So the plan does include some criteria that we might apply before we really look at whether a widened shoulder is appropriate in that location. So I just wanted to kind of sum up a lot of what Liz said is that while the emphasis in the plan was on neighborhood streets, and we love the flexibility, we love the typologies, we think it really fits into what could apply throughout Southwest Portland. We also know that you get landlocked if the neighborhood streets are improved and you don't do the busy streets. And at one of the open houses where we did the ranking of where you want the improvements made, Capitol Highway and Taylor's Ferry Road were at the top of the list. So, you know, even though it's a neighborhood plan, everybody knows these are really key streets that need to be improved. So I just want to sum up by saying this is a landmark study. I was just pleased from the beginning when this got funded and really pleased with the direction that it went. And we just say, let's go for it. Let's implement this plan as quickly as we can. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all. Any questions? Thanks very much.
The formal presentation, Mayor, just now, ever signed up?
Okay, thank you. So, Carla,
Thank you, ladies.
do we have some folks signed up in addition to this invited testimony?
Yes, we have 2 people signed up. Please come on up. David Murphy and John Gibbon.
Come on up. Morning, welcome.
How you guys doing? Anyway, I'm a local resident. Address
Or you
29.
can give us your
Don't
address.
need address.
Just your name. Yeah.
Yeah, David Murphy. Anyway, thank you guys for your time. The water issue, all the water, if you go onto Portland Maps with the address 2910 Southwest Miles, go to environmental and then go to sewage, we'll find that there's a right-of-way that BES owns that comes through there. So all the water from 29th Street and all the water that comes down Capitol and that whole area right there gets focused right into one spot. And then that sewer line cuts through the property. It's a combi storm drain sewer. My whole half of the yard has gotten wiped out, especially with this last event, but it's a reoccurring event because these storm drains will clog up. I've called the city and had Sol Carlson come out from BES, and sometime soon, hopefully sooner than soon, they scope this pipe because I have a feeling that the western red cedar trees are exactly right on top of these lines. I have a feeling that the roots have come in. I've also noticed lots of rats in the yard, and when I cleaned up the other day, there's lots of drowned rats out on the road. My garage completely flooded, whole side of the house. There's a huge pond. I got a bunch of pictures. There has been formed a huge crack all the way down the center of the garage. One of the stem walls is cracked. The side of the house has dropped. And there's probably about 7 cracks down the side of the house. And I've had Terra Firma come out, and I haven't had a bid yet, but what's going to probably have to happen is the whole pad's going to come out in the garage. It's got to get rebar, repoured. And this is a recurring situation because these particular drains will clog very easy. And on 29th Street, if you walk up the road, the water doesn't hit any of the storm drains, and some of the neighbors have diverted the water from the property onto the street where it's actually supposed to go directly into the drain. And so there's a bunch of issues just right in that spot. And my neighbor just down below me, his garage also flooded. So that's about it on that.
Wow. All right. Well, appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Obviously,
Yeah.
the staff was taking notes. Sounds like an issue where we need some follow-up. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Much. You bet. John, welcome.
It's,
you'll be able to enjoy this before long. I'm off.
John, put your name in the
John
Put your
Gibbon.
name in the record, and
John
pull your
Gibbon.
microphone over us a little bit there. There you go.
From Southwest Portland, formerly of PERB. I'm back to take a valedictory laugh about a good project that got started with maybe a little help from me when I was on PERB. This is a great project. The combination of the two bureaus is absolutely essential. What you just heard from my neighbor is I've got to report something that you hear all over Southwest Portland. I know of it happening in my own neighborhood where we have responsibility for our own stormwater at least. So it's not surprising that you hear these kind of problems happening, and at least this is a system that will This is an approach that will start addressing these collectively as a community on a scale that will appeal to the neighborhoods. Because if you've been out there, and I know Commissioner Fritz has been, you will find people in Southwest Portland, they're in love with their natural settings, and sometimes when you say, we need to improve this street, or we need to have some storm drainage improvement here, they'll say, oh, well, you're going to ruin the rural character of Southwest Portland. And I got to tell you, just coming back from 4 days in Druzy, I have a little bit of problem in focusing in on Southwest Portland as having a rural character. But I understand that that's a reality in dealing with people. And by creating a scalable set of proposed improvements that we can present to people, hopefully we'll overcome that. They'll say, oh, well, this isn't really so much. It isn't full street sidewalk, storm drainage, the whole thing, and more people will do a buy-in. And that's an important part in all these neighborhoods, and for Markham especially, because I'm going to turn to wear my Markham land use rep hat for a couple of minutes and say there's a couple of points in here that are truly important. One is this project that I think represents great entrepreneurship, government entrepreneurship, because I think what happened was Denver came to one of our Markham meetings, discovered that a Green Street project was proposed at the bottom of 19th where it impacts Taylor's Ferry Road, and within the timeline of this project, we got some additional work proposed on 19th, and that's great. We'll see how this flies within the next month, and we can give you some feedback on how that works. The other thing I want to say, I understand the issue about busy streets. I recognize the people with Capitol Highway have a lot of problems, but what I will say is if you look at what happened in Markham, we said connect through the neighborhoods from Northeast Markham to 26th, and we stayed away from asking for improvements on Taylor's Ferry. So I understand Capitol Highway is a different issue, but you know, some neighborhoods bought into playing this game.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your involvement. Thank you. Anyone else?
We have two more. I believe it's Glenn and Don Bach.
Morning.
Morning. Morning. My name is Glenn Bridger. Live in Southwest Portland. I wish to take this time to commend the team of BES and PBOT for their cooperative effort to try and resolve the forever issue we've had in Southwest Portland. And there's not a one of you up there that doesn't know it isn't a forever issue. We need to be making progress. I don't want to leave my grandkids with a city that still hasn't solved their issues. We need to have places to walk. We need to be effective. We need to take care of the water and pedestrian issues together. Appreciate your attention to this matter.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, Commissioners, Mayor. I'm Don Bach. I live in Hillsdale, and I've been a member of this group that's been working on this probably since before it started. But we're really pleased with the effort that you all authorized and urged, first of all, and second, for the team that was put together to work on it. They've done a fantastic job. The highlights, I specifically want to point out and express support for an important little part of this plan. It has a proposed master streets plan change, making the connection from the Hillsdale Community Church or whatever, I think it's the Portland Bible Church, to Southwest 25th, 26th along Texas, right away generally. And this is a really key connection because people living at the crossing of Stevens Creek, with the connection that this would provide, will be it'll be easier for them to walk to Safeway, Fred Meyer, the parks, and Barber when we have a high-capacity transit or more high-capacity transit on Barber. Really key connection. On extended shoulders, while they're probably viewed as temporary, I'm sure they're going to be, not many of them will be replaced in my lifetime because, they're the kind of investment it takes to build sidewalks versus extended shoulders or widened shoulders. It's like 6 to 1, and we can build a lot of improvements that federal studies have shown. We get 80% of the safety benefits from extended shoulders versus sidewalks. And, so it's really, really important for a lot of people to be able to move more efficiently. I have one small amendment request that I'd like you to consider, and I sent this to you by email. My printer coughed, and I couldn't print out the copies for you. But basically, we currently are using Southwest Capitol Hill Road as part of the Urban Trail 6. It wasn't designated that way in the plan. It was an oversight for partially, and also because a park trail that was now been built we utilize part of that. And all I would ask is that we put Capitol Hill Road about 300 feet on the Urban Trails plan. Not important right now, but you never know when it's got to be part of the plan or something. So it's being used as a trail. It would be part of the Hillsdale Lake Oswego Regional Trail. And, we eventually will ask for a sidewalk or extended shoulder in that specific segment as a high priority. But anyway, that's the only request in that regard. Thank you very much. And again, this is a great project. I really appreciate the cooperation that's happened, and it's been fun to watch it proceed. Thank you. Oh, and the 19th thing that John was talking about, really, really important. We really appreciate BES and PBOT moving forward to really make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So you want to?
Mayor, I think I would just propose that, as is our customary practice, Mr. Bach has put an issue into the record. It's now before us. We'll consider it as part of the testimony in support of the plan, and we will report back to you.
Okay. All right, good, because this is being adopted by resolution, so you can obviously always amend the maps later, so.
He made his record, and we will appropriately respond.
Okay, great, thank you.
I move the adoption of the report.
Okay, second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Novick,
Thank you very much to everybody who's been working on this, and it's quite extraordinary to have this many people say this many good things about anything in the city. So really, really appreciate it. Aye.
Fritz.
Well, I see a lot of current and former staff from both bureaus in the room, and I greatly appreciate you being here. I think when you've worked on something like this, coming to see the vote is always very satisfying. Dan Bazzini, former BES, very much appreciate you being here. Also, my neighbor, Jeremy Grand, I thought you were very restrained to not hop up and talk about Capitol Highway. But that said, I appreciate hearing the history of the neighborhood from the Raz family, and I'm sure that Warner Raz is with us tonight, this morning. And also Dorothy Gage and Patty Lee would definitely want to be here, and I'm sure are watching over it. And also chagrined as I am that we don't go further south on Capitol and further west on Taylor's Ferry. So thank you very much to the staff. Commissioner Fish and Commissioner Novick, really exemplary exhibition of how bureaus actually do work together a lot, and to have something coming to council as a joint project and in a particularly difficult area of the city to figure things out. It's remarkable, and I congratulate everybody who's been involved, and thanks for all of the good work in a very short time. I mean, it seems like it's such a well-baked plan that it's probably that I thought it had been many years in the making. So to hear that it was kicked off at the Southwest Sunday Parkways last year is remarkable, and congratulations. Aye.
Well, first to Commissioner Novick's point, Steve, we've actually asked this distinguished group to come to each council meeting in the future and testify in support of the first item that we're taking up. But in all seriousness, thank you to the citizens who took time today to come and testify in support of this. And as the mayor and Commissioner Fritz have noted, thank you for telling us the history, because there's a wonderful history that lays underneath the great work that the two bureaus have done here. So we appreciate that lesson, that history lesson. Commissioner Fritz, at a moment like this, and it's something she does that I love, she takes the page in the report, the plan, that lists everybody that's been a part of it and just acknowledges everybody. And so I can't read all the names, but to all the staff people, to the community working group, to the project team, to everybody that devoted time and energy to this process, thank you. And Steve, thank you very much for the strong collaborative relationship that BES and PBOT enjoy. To the comment that either, I guess Glenn made about, or Don, about the forever process. I made a note about that. I don't know how many more years I'll be on the council, but I have a hunch that before we're done, we will be able to replace the forever process with something a little more present. Because the issue that we're trying to address has eluded an easy solution, partly because of cost, partly because of regulations, partly because of some communication glitches. But with the inspired community leadership that is pushing us to get beyond forever, I'm confident that we'll get to that day and we'll be able to celebrate that. So thank you. And finally, one of the joys of my work is I get to work with a lot of really talented people. And this city has extremely talented and dedicated people who work very, very hard for the public and who probably don't get the recognition they deserve. And so while I want to offer a blanket thank you to everybody who was involved in this, particularly to Denver and Naomi, I just want to say how proud we are of your work. And when we have a forum like this in which the public comes forward and affirms what we know through our close working relationship with you, it's very gratifying. So thank you for bringing credit to the respective bureaus that you work for. Thank you to my colleagues for their support, and I'm pleased to vote aye.
Saltzman?
Well, I really appreciate the work that's been put into this plan. Not only do I live in this neighborhood, but I walk by the Rosbach crossing every morning on my morning walk. And it's really, it's gratifying. I think it's really gratifying. I really want to thank the Bureau of Environmental Services and the Bureau of Transportation for modeling such good behavior among bureaus that transcend commissioners in charge. So, because I was in charge of BES for 11 years, and a lot of these issues are not new to me, but the level of cooperation being demonstrated here by these two commissioners in charge and the two bureaus respectively is new. And it's a good spirit of cooperation that I hope will be modeled in a lot of different projects, but it's so important, particularly in Southwest, with the drainage and the lack of good roads. So this is great work. Thank you. Aye.
Hales?
Well, I want to second these comments. Commissioner Fritz used the word exemplary. I think that's right. This is exemplary in terms of the cooperation of both the bureaus and the community activism that fed this work. I'd also use the word heartening because we had a council discussion yesterday, one of many now happening and soon to come, about the update of our comprehensive plan, an effort in which we are going to try to accommodate 260,000 more neighbors and 140,000 more jobs in this city over the next 20 years. A daunting couple of numbers if there ever were. And one of the things that we have to be able to do in that big transition is address these deficiencies in our infrastructure that have been around in many cases for decades, and these here are classic examples of that. And I think both because, yes, there will be growth in Southwest too, and because we have to have a low carbon future where people don't have to drive to get to their neighborhood destinations. And because I think the credibility of the whole enterprise of trying to plan for 260,000 more people is undermined if we don't have an answer for what are we going to do about those 50 miles of dirt streets. And now, thanks to you, we have a big part of that answer. We also put a small amount of funding in the budget that the council adopted this year for supporting LIDs or otherwise getting these streets out of the mud. Making that an ongoing commitment of the city's general fund, I think, is an important effort that will have to be added to, but it's a nice start. So I do think we all have to be able to look our neighbors in the face, say, well, we're going to grow. Yeah, what are you going to do about now we have part of that answer here? And I think that's really important on a larger scale. Obviously, it's hugely important to the people that live on these streets and who are dealing with the side effects of an incomplete set of stormwater improvements that need to be there to make sure that people's homes are safe and that life works at street level. So very happy about this. As a former resident of Southwest, as a former neighborhood activist there, just like Commissioner Fritz, it's great to see this kind of progress and this kind of accord about how we move forward. So well done all around. Thank you very much.
Mayor, I neglected to make an inside joke.
What?
I just want the record to reflect that Al Iverson being here makes it clear that we're here for a game. This is not just practice.
Good point. It's not just practice anymore. Okay, thank you. Very well done. Let's move to the one item that we pulled from the consent calendar and moved to the regular calendar, and that's item 1132.
Authorize a grant agreement to Concordia University in the amount of $500,000 in fiscal year 2015-16 for use in the construction of the Fabian Concordia Early Childhood Development Center.
Mr. Withers is here. Welcome, and come up and tell us about this amazing project, please.
Good morning, Mayor Hales, Commissioner Fritz, Commissioner Novick, Commissioner Fish, Commissioner Saltzman. It's a pleasure to be here. A dozen years ago, a group of civic leaders was sitting with then Governor Kulingoski, and we were talking about the power and the importance of early childhood education and the need to make greater investments in early childhood education. And the governor sat back in his chair, his eyes lit up, he got this interesting grin on his face, and he said, "I love this moment. It's a moment where instead of reacting to crises, we get to look upstream and figure out how we prevent them." The city faces many challenges, and among those challenges certainly is the challenge of homelessness, challenges of food insecurity, challenges of behavioral health care. The 3 to PhD initiative, which is a partnership with Trillium Family Services, Portland Public Schools, and Concordia University, is one of those upstream solutions. As far as we know, it's unique in the entire nation that a private university is coming together with an inner city school district in a very low-income school to tackle the problem, closing the achievement gap, closing the opportunity gap, and doing it in a collaborative way where 1 + 1 + 1 doesn't equal 3, but we hope it equals 3,000 or more. That's the power of this multiplier. So what we have in 2 years will be a 132,000 square foot facility. It will house the Concordia University College of Education, the largest college of education in the state, and may I say, among the best in the state. It will house 800 Fabian students, including 120 Fabian students in early childhood education, 6 weeks through 60 months. And we know that that's where we can make a difference upstream. I apologize for being a little bit late. We were finishing up with some donors who were asking some very difficult questions. And finally, the husband and wife looked at each other and they said, "What really makes the difference in this program?" And they said, one, it's how teachers will be prepared. They're going to be prepared in an environment where they're working with the populations that Portland Public Schools serves every day of their career, from their freshman year through their senior year and beyond. They'll be prepared the way physicians are prepared. Then they said it's the wraparound services, it's the commitment, particularly from Trillium Family Services, to provide behavioral health care. And Pacific Foods will be providing organic, nutritious food through a food club at cost to families where food insecurity is a huge and significant issue. And then finally, it's the focus on science, technology, engineering, art, and math. We want to prepare young people to work with their hands as well as their heads and answer the question that Bill Furman and other leaders in our community have said, where is that team of talent who is interested in these jobs at $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, helping us build rail cars? We'll have an answer for Mr. Furman and for other CEOs in the community. It's been a community-wide effort. We've raised $10,055,000 to date. We're extremely grateful for your consideration and your support of our $500,000 request. The state of Oregon, through lottery bonds, is making a contribution of $750,000. Dan and Priscilla Wyden have made a significant gift to the science, technology, engineering, art, and math element in the building. And the university is proud to be raising $15.5 million of what promises to be $48 million plus facility, and one that Carl Talton, who's the leader and a leader in this community, the leader of the Northeast Portland STEM Coalition, says is really going to provide for children of color in North and Northeast Portland a level of facilities that they need to thrive, to survive, to be able to meet the demands of employers in this community. We're very grateful for your consideration of our request. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Gary. Questions for him? Thank you.
Mayor, I would, with your concurrence, I would move an emergency clause so we can vote on this today in the presence of Gary.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Let's take a roll call on adding the emergency clause.
Need some language for the reason for the emergency?
We have an educational achievement gap in our community, and the sooner we build this, the better.
That sounds good to me. Okay, roll call.
Novick?
Aye.
Fritz?
We will.
Fish?
Mayor, thank you for,
Just on the amendment.
It's just on the amendment.
Oh, excuse
Yeah,
me.
It's just on the emergency clause.
thank you.
I can tell when you're gearing up,
He's
Commissioner.
gearing up, okay, slow down.
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye, okay. Gary, let us thank you and call up anyone else that wants to speak on this item before we take action on it.
Mr. Lightning wished to speak on this?
Come on up. Good morning.
Morning. Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog PDX. I absolutely agree with this project. One of the questions I have is that I understand there was a bond measure in 2012 that was passed. And one of the concerns I have on this $500,000 grant from the city of Portland is we do have a public school here and a private university. And as you know, in the past, I've always questioned some of these grants on what the city of Portland, where they want to place the money. I don't have a concern on this development. I have a concern on giving a grant to a private university in a public school. One of my concerns in the past was also on the youth passes on TriMet. I had a concern on that. I want to see the programs move forward, but I question where the funding is coming from. And so I would like to look at this more from giving a loan on this, having it paid back in the future, and not doing a grant. And the reason why I say that again is we have many bureaus here again, and I don't have to list them from transportation to housing and everything else, that I think we don't have enough funding at this time. And people in this room may question what I'm saying. I'm saying this is a great development. I want to see this happen. I just question the city of Portland doing a grant and not a loan and having it repaid back in the future due to, number one, being declared a state of emergency in housing. Number two, Commissioner Novick, $1 billion in deferred maintenance and transportation, I think would be a fair number. And you have to come up with some funding. So again, I approve of the project. It's just the grant coming from the city of Portland during this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any further testimony, any further discussion? Then let's take a roll call, please, on the emergency ordinance.
Novick?
I actually am very sensitive to Mr. Lightning's point. And I think it should be rarely that the city gives money to any project that's sort of outside the scope of our normal business. But I think that investments in strengthening schools of education and early childhood education are among the most important investments we can make in this city, state, and country. So to have one $500,000 contribution to a salutary effort in those areas, I think is worth it, even though it's a departure from what we normally spend money on. Aye.
This is allocating the money that was discussed in the budget. Aye.
Fish?
Mayor,
This is allocating the money that was discussed in the budget. Aye.
Fish?
Mayor,
Stop
I could just
in
see,
time.
you probably steal signals during Ducks games too, Commissioner Fritz. I could just see you on the sidelines looking for those tells. First, I want to thank the mayor for including this in his budget, and this is either the second or third time that the mayor has put a city contribution into a community partnership that benefits children. We did it in the David Douglas Early Childhood program, which is now getting national attention. We did it in this. The bar is very high. David Douglas Early Childhood, Fabian. I hope we find another opportunity this budget year to support another kind of community partnership like this. But the truth is, the bar has been set very high because of these programs. And Mayor, what I especially love about this program is it involves Concordia and Portland Public Schools. And President Schlimpert has, for over 30 years, provided great leadership. Concordia has distinguished for many reasons, not the least of which is their women's soccer team keeps winning national championships. But it's the notion that they view themselves as part of a community. And one of the things I love when they put a turf field in is they invited the community to use their facility. That is not typical in local colleges and universities. So it's part of their value system. Last year, was Fabian. I'll never forget arriving with a wonderful reception from the principal and a big sign saying, "Welcome, Lou Frederick." And Lou had actually beat me to the punch. The principal for almost a day. One of my assignments was Concordia, was Fabian. I'll never forget arriving with a wonderful reception from the principal and a big sign saying, "Welcome, Lou Frederick." And Lou had actually beat me to the punch. Lou was already there giving orders, so I was the assistant principal for the day. But this is really important, and it wouldn't happen without Gary Withers and Elise Brown and Ken Thrasher and all these people that believe in our kids. And of all the things we invest in, this is one that touches my heartstrings. And I'm really proud that the mayor has prioritized every year a contribution for the benefit of our children in this vein. So thank you, and I'm proud to vote aye.
Saltzman?
Well, this is a very exciting partnership between Concordia, Portland Public Schools, and many others, but it's a great effort on behalf of kids, and it's a very exciting concept for your education of your future teachers, too, or our future teachers. So great work. Aye.
Hills?
So let me reinforce the rationale. I appreciate these comments from my colleagues because it's very important that the city be prudent and thrifty in our grant-making function, because we only should do a little of it, but we should do it for the right reasons, and the reasons that have been articulated here are good. But let me reinforce that a little bit more. Schools, parks, and community centers are the anchors of our neighborhoods. We don't operate schools, but we partner with them all the time. In fact, they often are literally twinned with a park. And the use of those facilities to make community life work for all of our citizens is a core responsibility of city government. The ownership and operation of the facility, whether it happens to be a public school operating on its own, or in this case, a public school operating in partnership with a university, is unimportant to the fact of that core partnership. Secondly, it's ironic and appropriate that Assistant Chief Modica, former captain of the Youth Services Division, is in the room, because we have a stake in the safety of this city, and the more we get upstream in the lives of our kids, the better chance we have of them being safe. And if we do a better job of early childhood education and a better job of keeping kids in school and a better job of achieving the third grade reading level and ninth grade transition and high school graduation, there will be less people for the Transit Services Division and the gang violence unit and every other part of the police bureau to deal with, because we have unsuccessful kids in our city. So I see that rationale as well, and everything we can do to get upstream in the lives of the kids of this city in partnership with other organizations, with our Parks Bureau and our Police Bureau and our neighborhoods, is money well spent in terms of leverage. So I think this is a great partnership. It deserves our support, and it's also completely appropriate that the city of Portland be this kind of partner. I'm very proud that we are. Thank you. Aye. Looking forward to it, Gary. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 1130, no, sorry, that's done, 1136.
Adopt a waste reduction plan and accept and authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Metro to receive Metro Waste Reduction Challenge funds of $283,408 and $336,189 for the Recycle at Work program in fiscal year 15-16.
Second reading, roll call.
Novick?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye. 1137 and 1144 together, please. I guess all of them, sorry, 1137 through 1144. Why don't you read them all?
1137, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with TriMet and City of Forest Grove for transit police services. 1138, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with TriMet and City of Gresham for transit police services. 1139, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with TriMet and City of Lake Oswego for transit police services. 1140, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with TriMet and Multnomah County for transit police services. 1141, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with TriMet and Oregon City for transit police services. 1142, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with City of Tigard for transit police services. 1143, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with TriMet and the City of Tualatin for transit police services. And 1144, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with TriMet and the City of West Lynn for transit police services.
Okay, Assistant Chief Modica and Commander Leloff are here. Come on up. Explain, why are we doing business with all these other governments? What's going on here?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. Quite frankly, these are the intergovernmental agreements between the agencies that help staff the Transit Police Division. And we can't approve IGAs unless they come before council. There's no fiduciary cost to the city. The finances basically pass through with our fiscal services management.
So we end up being the fiscal agent for these other cities in that transaction, even though we're not spending money to police Tigard.
That's correct. They're actually helping us police the system, and the overhead is covered by the extra 5% on the reimbursement that TriMet provides the City of Portland for each officer or command level officer assigned to the Transit Police Division.
Just a qualitative question I guess I would pose, and that is, in your opinions as the managers of this function, are we at the right level of effort in terms of the number of officers that this whole multi-agency program is funding, in terms of the level of public safety protection on a very, very busy transit system? Are we where we should be? Are you feeling like we're run ragged? Where are we? I know we can always use more, but how badly is that, how severe is that concern at the moment?
Commander?
So I think we're at about the right size. We're 67 sworn members throughout 570 square miles with 60 miles of light rail track and 14 miles of heavy rail track. And at peak time, as you all know, we have 500 to 600 buses on the road transporting 320,000 trips per day. So all cities and all this task force model, all the cities get influence, and we provide 4 different stations in which we operate out of the 3 different counties. I'd say we're right size. We just added 5 more positions for the Orange Line. The Orange Line is has exceeded all expectation of ridership, and the park and rides are full. So I feel confident. This is about $11.5 million package that TriMet provides policing services throughout the 570 square miles.
Yeah, as a rider of the Orange Line, I can attest that it's really hard to find a seat by the 3rd stop, so. Yeah, good problem to have. Okay, questions for Assistant Chief Modica or Commander Leloff? Thank you both. Please stand by if we have any others, and we'll see if there's anyone that signed up to speak on this item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
One person, Charles Johnson.
Okay, come on up. Morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Fitz could leave because he knows we think the same about this.
obviously, the safety and health of our citizens and neighbors while they ride TriMet is something that we all share value about. And I hope that the issues that Commissioner Fritz raised in her previous comments on this will influence your work as police commissioner, Mayor, to make sure that the ultimate focus of this policing effort is a strong sense of community and safety for everybody riding on TriMet, that nobody will feel profiled, and that people of diverse backgrounds and economic circumstances will feel they're getting equal respect from the TriMet system. TriMet has a separate fare inspection division of people wearing white shirts, and I want to encourage this whole community to take more seriously Commissioner Fritz's words about the overall budget of TriMet and how we can more equitably make sure that people who have financial hardship are able to participate in that system, and people who are better able to contribute financially to its operation do so that the police will just be looking for the occasional theft or the people who might need mental health care, and not so worried about whether somebody looks like a less likely to pay person. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, any other questions or comments before we vote? If there's no objection, I'm going to ask that the council vote on items 1137 to 1143 as a package, since they've all been read. Can we do that?
43 or 44?
Sorry, 44, 1137 through 1144. All emergency ordinances, all essentially identical. I'd like to do that with one roll call vote rather than 8, unless there's an objection.
Without objection.
Okay, so then roll call one on.
Council Clerk was thinking about
She's
it.
looking nervous about that, but I think we can put
She's
it into
objecting.
the
I
record
kind
that
of
we're.
am, sorry, but if
Let's just do,
that's a council
we can do them
decision,
separately.
Is that a problem, Carla?
we've never done that before. I'm
Well,
just-
come on.
Mayor.
We need a task
Mayor,
force.
I
I'm sorry,
know.
before we do that.
I move to consolidate 1137 to 1144.
Second.
Roll call on consolidation, please.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman,
I hope this isn't a dangerous precedent.
B,
Aye.
Hales.
I'll steal Commissioner Novick's line. This is council gone wild. Aye. Roll call on the package, please.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz,
I very much appreciate Assistant Chief Modica and Vandalilov for their diligence in making sure that the language we worked out before is in each of these, and also your commitment to working with the Equity Committee moving forward. So thank you. Aye.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Just to pause on that huge number of people that ride this transit system every day. This region would not work. This downtown would not work. The city would not work if our citizens didn't think it was a safe and positive experience to get on a train or a bus. So this is important, and it works regionally, and I appreciate the good effort that makes it so. Aye. Okay, item 1145.
Accept a grant in the amount of $373,569 and appropriate $168,460 for fiscal year 2015-16 from the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance, fiscal year 2014, Intellectual Property Enforcement Program, competitive grant to address intellectual property criminal enforcement in the Portland metropolitan region.
I believe Detective Waddell is here. Is that right? Yes, there she is. Good morning.
Good morning. And for the record, my name is Cheryl Waddell. I'm a detective with Portland Police Bureau White Collar Crime Unit. I'm currently the acting sergeant for the unit. In 2011, the Portland Police Bureau was awarded the BJA grant for intellectual property, and we had several successful investigations. Two of them were in health and safety for pharmaceuticals that were fraudulent, and they were successfully prosecuted. One of the pharmaceuticals was Cialis. The other one was for Viagra. Both of those investigations started outside of the city of Portland, but the suspects came into the city of Portland to sell their goods. Another of the successful investigations from that first grant was for software It turned out that the suspect was in the city of Canby. We did an undercover buy and subsequently a search warrant, and it turned out the suspect was a registered sex offender and successfully prosecuted. The other software case that was successfully investigated in the city of Portland was also an undercover buy. A search warrant was executed, and automatic weapons were seized during that search warrant. The suspect was a felon, and he was successfully prosecuted. So during these investigations of intellectual property, it's not only a health and safety issue that we've discovered for the greater Portland area, but also leads to stifling other types of crime. I am asking that the City Council will accept the grant that we were awarded for the 2 years of 2015 and 2016, and I believe the total amount was $379,000. We've expanded our task force to include 3 other agencies that assisted us in our investigations from the 2011 grant. That was Canby Police Department, the Tigard Police Department, and the Woodbourne Police Department. The money from this grant will go to training these 3 other agencies, as well as enforcement for overtime.
Question that just the software case just brings to mind, and that is, have you and others from this unit sat down with the Technology Association of Oregon and tried to see around the corner of what they see are the threats? I mean, we are such a software center now as a city, and I half understand that industry, but I suspect there are opportunities for intellectual property crimes there, because wherever there's money and commerce, there's that opportunity. So I don't know if you're having that dialogue with those that are a lot smarter than me about how software is developed and sold, but there are a lot of those people doing that work here in Portland.
Correct. And that's why we're going to focus on health and safety as well as the electronics aspect of this grant.
Yeah.
We're not specifically speaking with the group that you mentioned. I will definitely steer us in that group. We will be speaking directly with the federal government's IPR Center, which is the clearinghouse of all intellectual property infringements for the whole nation. So they will be able to steer us in areas where we need to look.
Yeah, I'd recommend the conversation with the Technology Association of Oregon. Skip Newberry, who heads that, is a former employee of the mayor's office in Portland under Mayor Adams, so he understands city government, and he also obviously understands the industry, so I'd recommend that contact. Any other questions for Sergeant Waddell? Thank you so much. Appreciate you being here. Anyone else want to speak on this item? If not, we'll take a vote, please, on the emergency ordinance.
Novick?
Thank you. Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye. Item 1146.
Accept bid of Emery and Sons Construction Group for the Piedmont Sewer Rehabilitation Project for $3,098,500.
Ms. Moody, come on up.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Christine Moody, Procurement Services. You have before you the procurement report recommending a contract award to Emery and Sons Construction. The engineer's estimate on this project was $3.4 million, and on September 10th, 2015, 4 bids were received, and Emery and Sons is the low bidder at $3,098,500. The city identified 8 divisions of work for potential minority, women, and emerging small business subcontracting opportunities. MWESB subcontracting participation on this project is at 29.2%, with work being performed in concrete cutting, hauling, and traffic control. I'll turn this back over to council if you have any questions.
Questions for Christine? Thank you very much. Anyone want to speak on this item? Then do I have a motion to adopt the report?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Novick?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye. 1147.
Adopt the fiscal year 2015-16 fall supplemental budget and make other budget-related changes.
Mr. Scott, welcome.
Andrew Scott, City Budget Director, and I'm joined by Jessica Kennard, City Bump Coordinator. Briefly today, we had a work session on the fall bump last week, so I won't go into a lot of detail. But from a process standpoint, we are going to be discussing the fall bump today, take any amendments if there are any proposed as needed, and then a vote will be taken next week. And that's to ensure that we have the correct DJC 5-day notification so that we can have another public hearing again for next week for public testimony. We can also take testimony today and next week.
So we'll be scheduled for a hearing next week, hearing and adoption next week, not just second reading?
Yeah, it's technically not a second reading. It feels a lot like a first and second reading, but budget ordinances don't need to have the first and second reading. So anyway, we'll be taking testimony today and next week as well. So very briefly, in terms of the fall bump, the supplemental budget that you have in front of you today contains an increase in general fund appropriation of about $6.6 million. That's a combination of $4.6 million in encumbrance carryovers, revenue and program carryovers, $1.4 million in excess beginning fund balance, and about $500,000 in bureau-generated revenue. Per city financial policy, a minimum of 50% of the $1.4 million excess balance must go to capital set-aside, major maintenance and replacement projects. The remainder falls to unrestricted contingency. And so the proposed budget, the proposed bump in front of you exceeds this minimum capital infrastructure investment with a $1.7 million investment in major maintenance and infrastructure costs. And the two projects we talked about last week, there's the 911 Center uninterrupted power supply, and then also $1 million for the Sears Center occupancy needs. There are also $5.6 million in new general fund expenses in the bump. Again, these are funded by the excess beginning fund balance by reallocating $2.6 million of Portland Building debt service expenditures in the current year and by allocating $1.6 million of unrestricted contingency. And again, those are listed in the ordinance that's before you. And then finally, there are some CalTarget adjustments based on fair wage adjustments, budget notes, and then also a $10 million increase in Portland Housing Bureau's current appropriation level target. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, questions? Andrew, Jessica? And is it time, perhaps before we take public testimony, to put amendments on the table?
I think amendments, yeah.
Okay, so proposed amendments?
Mayor, I have a proposed amendment. I'll pass this down. My amendment would be to fund the Age-Friendly Portland Initiative to the tune of $51,765.57 from unrestricted contingency funds. And if I can get a second, I'd be happy to discuss it. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Fritz. Very briefly, colleagues, as you know, this is a partnership with Portland State University that dates back to 2010 when the council adopted the Age-Friendly Portland Plan. Portland was the first city in America to be designated age-friendly by the World Health Organization. Since then, the implementation work associated with this plan has been led by Portland State University on a volunteer basis. Alan Delatorre, Margaret Neal, community members, and student volunteers have done great work, but it's all been done on a volunteer basis. We have asked them to play a leadership role and to step up, and I believe it's now our turn to support them, or quite frankly, colleagues, I fear that this partnership will be strained beyond repair. And we have an opportunity in this bump to not only support their broader work, but to specifically support their work with the Age-Friendly Housing Committee in looking at ways of ensuring that our future housing stock is accessible to older adults.
Okay.
I might speak to the motion also. I seconded it despite my reservation about funding things that are expected to be ongoing as part of the bump process. We're already funding things that are expected to be ongoing as part of the bump process, so that's one thing. But secondly, I agree with Commissioner Fish that this is a priority and that it's a relatively small amount of money in order to both preserve a great relationship and leverage all of the other resources we get with this program at PSU.
And if the council makes this adjustment, contingency will still stand at?
It'll be just over $1 million, $1.1 million currently. Actually, it's $1,145,000, so it will be just under $1.1 million.
Okay.
And Mayor,
Is this an ongoing request or a one-time?
It's a one-time. So we fully understand that we have to make the case again.
In the regular budget process. Okay. Anyone, any other amendments? Let's take up other amendments. Sorry, we should vote to accept that amendment and then take testimony, and we'll take up other amendments. So, roll call.
Novick,
You can just yell.
You can vote from there.
A lot of drama, Steve.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, other amendments to propose.
So I'm not clear in terms of the budget notes whether the allocation of the second part of the costs of the Phase 1 Parks employee conversion to union and bargaining unit jobs, is that already in the proposal, or is that something that I need to?
So it's not based on the email exchanges yesterday. I do have a proposed amendment if you'll pass that.
I'm going to be moving the amendment that Andrew is passing out right now.
All right.
And just to refresh everybody's memory, or for the public watching at home, the proposed budget adjustment includes $900,000 as from contingency as part of that cost, which the employees are already in the new positions and already incurring costs. It leaves an estimated $700,000 that's not yet funded, and this amendment would, with the mayor's guidance, leadership, would require all of the bureaus to help pay for that. So the amendment is, it does say that the city budget office will set aside $900,000 of general fund unrestricted contingency, and then we will add and $700,000 from general fund compensation set aside in this fiscal year for personnel cost increases associated with the Portland Parks and Recreation arbitration agreement.
Okay, I'll second that. So, Andrew, describe how this will work. We have a compensation set aside overall. It will now be, we'll have a call on that of $700,000. What will remain for other adjustments that are needed for bureaus that need to access that comp set aside for the rest of the year?
Right. So the compensation set aside currently stands at $6.5 million. Setting aside this $700,000 would reduce it to about $5.8 million, a little bit more than that. And it would reduce bureau compensation set asides proportionally, again, based on how many personnel, what their costs are within that. And so we did look at that very briefly this morning. Obviously, police and fire are the largest in terms of personnel costs. So it would reduce police bureaus' compensation set aside by about $350,000 and fires by about $187,000. Parks is the third largest, and they would be reduced by about $75,000, and then other bureaus much smaller amounts than that. And as we discussed at last week's work session, what this amendment does is it essentially spreads that $700,000 to all city bureaus. So the guidance, if it passes, that we will give city bureaus as a result is to expect less compensation set aside available and manage accordingly for the rest of the fiscal year.
Essentially, this is giving all of the bureaus notice that we do have this unexpected cost in this fiscal year, and that we will all need to tighten our belts in order to be able to pay that, given that we don't have a large quantity of contingency left.
Andrew, what's the impact of BOAC?
Thank you. $19,322.
And colleagues, my expectation too, and in discussion with the city budget office, is that if it turns out that any of the bureaus look like they're going to not be able to make that there may be additional requests in the spring budget adjustments. I couldn't responsibly, as the commissioner in charge of Portland Park and Recreation, continue at our current level of service without making cuts unless we're sure that we are going to be spreading this year's costs citywide.
And Commissioner Fritz, just for clarification, if we adopt this amendment, we are, in essence, setting aside this money, but then the next step is we have to determine what we are going to invest on what schedule. So that this does not decide the underlying question. This just allocates the available funds.
Now, this is just for this year's, which we've already decided, the Phase 1. This doesn't address the question of Phase 2. So this is what we're spending this year to pay staff who are currently doing the job and have been since the summer.
This funds the agreed upon Phase 1 approach that we
Correct.
discussed as a council?
Correct.
Okay.
And the reason for the set aside, in total, this would set aside $1.6 million, which was at the low end of the estimates for Phase 1. We think, though, working with the Parks Bureau, we're headed towards that low end. But when we get to the spring bump, we will have a much more certain estimate as to what the actual costs are. To the extent they come in less than $1.6 million, we'd be able to allocate some of this money back. To the extent it comes in more, we'll need to find other sources.
So go ahead, Dan, questions?
So explain the compensation set aside.
So compensation set aside, every year we take the increase from cost of living and health benefit increases, and we budget it separately from a bureau budget for 1 year on a one-time basis. The rationale for that is in most bureaus, there are vacancies that occur during the year, and they can fund those cost increases through those vacancy savings. This has been a long-time practice of the city, and it's a little bit of a cost-saving mechanism. But essentially, if you are fully staffed all year long, you will need to come in the spring bump and request your share of the compensation set aside because your adopted budget does not have enough to pay for all of your employees for a full year wages.
So we're talking about the compensation set aside for the current fiscal year?
The current fiscal year, right. And so what this means is that bureaus, again, as they're, and you know, police and fire usually request and receive most of their compensation set aside every year. They don't always spend it every year, but they usually request it. And this means that they will have less available to request. So they may need to hold some vacancies for longer as a result. I use those two. This is true of all bureaus. Those two, though, are obviously the largest share of the compensation set aside.
Does fire have vacancies? Fire and rescue?
They do have vacancy savings, although again, fire generally requests most of its compensation set aside, and depending on the year, some years they spend most of it, and some years they don't.
Yeah, I'm supportive of this approach, even though it does mean that all of our bureaus, all of our general fund bureaus are going to be asked to run a little lean. That's more difficult than others in some bureaus. It's difficult in fire because they're close to fully staffed. It'll be difficult in police, not because they're close to fully staffed, they got lots of vacancies, but because we're burning overtime at an enormous rate, because we're short-staffed and we've had the worst year on record for gang violence. And so the gang unit and neighborhood patrol folks have been using a huge amount of overtime. Blessedly, that rate of activity has fallen off in the last couple of weeks, and we can hope and pray that that's the case for the rest of the year. But it's been bad in terms of their use of overtime. So when we get to the spring bump, we're going to have a clear-eyed look at where we are in each of these bureaus. But the other reason I'm supportive of this is that we're in a partnership with a labor organization here that has won an arbitration case and where we have a moral responsibility to make good on our need to pay our employees appropriately. And we, in effect, need to show that we're taking every available dollar and dedicating it to this work. Because we have to work together on a transition over time. And so that's why I'm prepared to do this, is to show that we really are serious about finding all available dollars in the city's budget to make good on our responsibility. And knowing that even in a relatively healthy, stable, more stable general fund budget than we had a couple of years ago, there's not a lot of wiggle room in this budget. We still have 50 less police officers than we had in 2012, 2013. We have firefighters who are paid for by a grant that will have to be returning to general fund support in the next budget. We have a housing responsibility that we've all committed to, and we have a Parks Bureau that's doing great work, serving a lot more kids with community centers that are open and free, and where we need to take better care of our employees. So it's going to be a challenging budget year. This just makes, I think, really puts us all on notice, including all of our bureaus, that everyone needs to operate very efficiently and very prudently, even though, again, we have a healthier budget than we had a couple of years ago. So I hope that message is understood and received throughout the city family. Other amendments, we need to take a roll call vote on this, accepting this amendment, and then we'll take testimony. So roll call on the amendment, please.
Novick?
I'm very sympathetic to the intent here. I confess I haven't consulted thoroughly with BOEC as to whether they can handle that 19,000. So with the caveat that I need to talk to them about it between now and next week, aye.
Fritz?
Thank you, colleagues. This is a citywide issue and needs a citywide solution, and Parks is not able to absorb this level of a cut without making programmatic and personnel cuts. So this, we will be having some very challenging conversations in the main budget next year. This is the right thing to do for this one. Aye.
Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye.
Hales?
Aye. Okay, any other amendments to propose? All right, thank you both very much. Any public testimony on the fall bump as now amended?
Yes, we have 5 people signed up.
Okay.
The first 3, please come on up, are Terry Bernier, Ted Bryan, and Erica Askin.
Good afternoon. It is now afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon. My name's Terry Bernier, and I've been working for the City of Portland as a seasonal part-time employee at East Portland Community Center for over 13 years. 6 years ago, my life was turned upside down. My husband of 30 years was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. We were the average middle-class family. This changed overnight. Talking with our financial advisor, I was told it would be nearly impossible at my age to find a full-time benefited position. When my husband passed away, I was given the maximum 1,200 hours a year for a seasonal part-time employee, but that did not afford me to live without dipping into what little savings I had. 2 years ago, my oldest son and 3 grandkids moved in with me. Being a single parent, he was not able to afford to live on his own and provide for his family. I was given the opportunity to become a 30-hour temporary benefited city employee with a living wage of $15.02 an hour. With this increase in wage, I've been able to afford some basics that I wasn't able to afford before. This temporary position is helping me to be able to feel a bit more comfortable that I'll be able to stay in my home of 30 years while still able to help raise my grandchildren in a familiar and safe environment. I understand there's an amendment being presented and that I'm in favor of spreading the cost of this beyond phase 1 because the city's budget has been for too long been carried on the backs of the park workers. I appreciate the city has stepped up to provide more rec workers with a living wage and that these temporary jobs be brought into the budget as a permanent position and to be funded on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, I mean.
Hi, I'm Ted Bryan. I work at the Community Music Center in Southeast Portland. And as a result of Phase 1, I was also temporarily appointed to a recreation leader position. For me, it's a half-time position. I work 20 hours a week. Before this, I was working in the Customer Service Representative 2 position. And my job has not really changed, but my benefits and my wage, of course, have changed. And as a result of that, I am living with much more financial stability right now, and I also have a regular work schedule. Before this, I was sort of roughly doing 20 hours a week, but there was always uncertainty. And so now I have a set schedule, and that's been really beneficial for me personally, and it's also been very beneficial for our organization at the Community Music Center. What I do there requires a lot of site-specific knowledge, and it requires a lot of familiarity with the community. We have a very close community there. We have families who are bringing their children in for lessons for 14 years of their lives, and I can tell that I really value being a part of that community and connecting with them, and I can tell that the customers appreciate having stability and continuity there and someone who knows their situation. And I would encourage that investing in stability for parks employees at my position in the long term is a very good idea because it strengthens the community centers. My position is we have a fairly small staff, and what I do is really important to the integrity of the center. And I think that's true at a lot of other centers around the city. And so I want to thank you for putting this phase 1 into play because it's been a big help for us. And I think that moving forward, really this could be seen as investing in the strength of our communities in Portland, because having workers who feel that they're valued and that they're fairly compensated for their time is really important. That feeds into the strength of the organizations and sort of that feeling, the well-being, investing in the well-being of the workers. It pays forward, it trickles down. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Erica Askin. I'm the business manager of Laborers Local 483. I don't think I can say it any more astutely than our new members have just said it, but I really appreciate Commissioner Fritz and the mayor's amendment and your vote on that amendment for funding citywide of the Phase 1 arbitration compliance. I think also their statements are a reflection of what happens when you bring people into a union, that these very important voices are now shared. I also appreciate, Mayor, your comment earlier that the community centers are a core function of city services. And on that point, in the future, if the city keeps on investing in the community centers and looking at it as a citywide problem, as Commissioner Fritz said, because it already is the contingent labor problem is a citywide problem. But in the future, if they keep on investing in this way, there's the possibility that all of these new teen mentors that are currently working in the centers under your initiative will now have fair wages and benefits. And I agree that these kinds of services, like others that are provided in the community centers, are core services to the city. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, I think we have a couple more folks signed up. Thank you all for being here.
Michael Bunocore and Jill Smith.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hales, Commissioners. Thanks for having us here today. I'll be brief. Jill is going to speak to an issue that we are asking for you to co-invest with us to help solve. Recently, when Kurt Krieger presented the State of Housing report, he said that one of the indicators of the rental market is the success rate of the Housing Choice Voucher lease-up rate, and we are now at a level that's below 75%, which is considered a significant problem, and around the statewide average is now, I think, around 50%. So as bad as it is, there is the possibility of it becoming worse. So again, Jill will speak to that, but I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that Commissioner Saltzman and his staff and the Portland Housing Bureau staff have been really tremendous partners in helping us look at this issue, and the investment request before you is one of a number of ways that we are working to address this issue, both sort of programmatically and at policy levels. So know that we are working hard, and in all of the ways that we are partnered together around working through this housing crisis that we face. We're just deeply grateful for the partnership and your consideration for this investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. I had this morning down. The Housing Choice Voucher Program, known as Section 8 in our community, is a huge resource for our community, and it's a very unique program, which makes it the most popular one that people really want access to, because it was designed to provide choice. People can choose to live in a good neighborhood, near a good school, near medical facilities, near transportation. And unfortunately, that choice is diminishing because of the market. It's a market-driven program, and the market is having a really negative impact on our ability to use this amazing resource. Home Forward provides assistance for up to just under 10,000 households with vouchers. We have that many vouchers. It's approximately $70 million a year that comes into the community that Home Forward distributes to landlords. The program is designed to serve families earning under 50% of area median income, At Home Forward, over 82% of the people we serve earn less than 30% of area median income. And just so you know what that amount is, for one person, they earn $15,450 a year. And for two, it's $17,650 a year. And these are the people.
That's 30%?
That's 30%. Yeah. So that really helps you to understand who these folks are. These are the folks that would be homeless without our help. And unfortunately, even those with vouchers are struggling as they're being asked to move due to rent increases, affordability issues, and utilizing that voucher. I wanted to provide you with a few current data points that are effective right now today to help put this in perspective for you. Home Forward between September of 2014 and September of 2015 put we put about 1,700 vouchers in people's hands coming off of our waiting list. Unfortunately, we have a success rate right now of about 72%. Who is getting those vouchers? I told you about their income. Something else you should be aware of is 60% of those voucher holders that were successful finding a place are people with seniors that are seniors and people with disabilities. 44% of those vouchers are being utilized by people of color. Some other things I thought you'd find interesting is while we're down to a success rate of 72%, really because of the market conditions, our VASH voucher success rate is 78.5%. And we're doing better with that. And the reason we're doing better is because of the supports that folks need that have high barriers that are low income. And that's what the Section 8 Success Fund is all about, is trying to mirror some of those things that we know work. Landlords are critical. We continue to do landlord outreach. We've trained well over 1,000 landlords in the last year, all over the state, actually. The state bill with the Landlord Guarantee Fund is helping us a lot, and your support is truly appreciated. And just to reiterate what Michael said previously, Home Forward's Board of Commissioners is aware of our request to you, and staff plans to present them with a resolution requesting additional funding that matches your authorization that it sounds like you'll be giving next week. And again, thank you. We appreciate this.
Thank you. That really helps illustrate the importance of this.
Yeah, I just want to make sure everybody understands the success rate. So these are people that get a voucher and they can't find housing within, what's the period of time?
So what happens, to put it in perspective, is people will wait on a list. The lucky few that made the lottery that have been on a list, right now people have been on a list over 3 years. They go through quite a bit of work to actually get the voucher. They attend a 3-hour class, they turn in a lot of paperwork and income verifications, and then after they attend the class and have that voucher in their hand, which is very valuable, we give them initially 4 months to find a unit, and we extend that to 6 months as needed. Right now, the average household's taking about 80 days when they're successful, and unfortunately, we're having a high number that aren't.
And if they're unsuccessful, they have to surrender the voucher.
They do.
Is that right?
They do, yes. So
Right. And so we should be up around 90. You're historically been up in the 90%.
we were in 2011, shortly after Commissioner Fish led the Section 8 task force. We're still aggressively doing everything we were doing at the time of the task force and more, much more. This is the market.
If I could just add a comment, the fact that we're down to 72% is not a reflection on Jill, who is arguably the most influential person in Section 8 policy in the country. It's not a reflection on Michael being the new ED. It's not a reflection on Dan. It's a reflection on the fact that Congress has chosen to use these market-based tools. And just like low-income tax credits, which tanked during the recession, Section 8 vouchers don't work very well if you don't have an inventory of affordable units that people can rent. It is the underbelly of a market-based system. But Dan, I thank you for bringing this forward. I think this is a great investment. Jill, I thank you for all the work you've done to streamline Section 8, because I think we're generally recognized as being one of the more landlord-friendly programs thanks to your work. And I also want to say that I appreciate the work you did on the low-income discount task force that the Water Bureau led. And colleagues, for years, there's been a solution that's eluded us as to how to get the discount to people that don't have a water meter. It's the fundamental flaw in our system. But we're very proud of the partnership with Home Forward and Michael and Jill's commitment to pass the discount through to Section 8 voucher holders. That's an example where if you have the right partner, you can overcome some of the obstacles. And so we are looking to get as much of that discount to existing Section 8 voucher holders. It's not easy, but we couldn't ask for a better partner, so thank you both.
Thank you. I neglected to tell you a really important point that is part of the Success Fund. HUD sets their fair market rents based on 3-year-old American Community Survey data. They've shared that with us. And when you're in this kind of market, 3-year-old data lags behind a little bit, 20 to 30%. So we have partnered with you all, hopefully, as well as our neighboring housing authorities. There's 3 neighboring, and we've all gone in together to contract with Washington State University, who has successfully submitted a survey meeting HUD's requirements to have Seattle's fair market rents reset. And they're in that process of doing that right now. We've all contributed to that effort. That would result in us being able to offer higher payment standards, enabling folks to get into more units.
That's great. Hope that works. Thank you.
Good work, yes.
Thank you both. Thanks very much. Anyone else want to speak on this item? If not, then the ordinance as amended passes to next week's calendar for another hearing and adoption. Thank you all very much. We have a few items remaining from the morning calendar. I'd like to try to power through those and give the council at least a little bit of a lunch break. So let's maybe take all the second reading items. Let's take 1148 and then the second reading items, and then we'll return to 1149.
1148, authorize a participating agreement with Office Depot, Inc. for the purchase of office supplies for an annual not-to-exceed amount of $1,500,000.
Ms. Moody.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Did you want me to make this fast, or?
Yes.
Okay.
In a word.
It's great, though, but it is good what you're doing.
Thank you, Christine. Your time is up.
Okay.
I move the motion.
Okay, so I have sent you a memo about this contract, and what we're requesting is the ordinance is recommending the authorization of a participating agreement to the Office Depot Cooperative Contract, which is under the Western States NASPO agreement, for an annual not-to-exceed amount of $1,500,000, and that's through January 4th, 2017.
This is essentially an on-call agreement that we buy supplies as needed under this contract, and we may or may not use up the entire $1.5 million.
That's correct. The 1.5 is an estimate based upon our historical spend.
Okay. Questions for Christine? Anyone want to speak on this item? Okay, it's an emergency ordinance. Let's take a roll call vote, please.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, this is a very good, this looks like a very good deal, particularly Office Depot's commitment to meeting a lot of our sustainability goals and things like that, so it's great. Aye.
Hales.
Good work. Thank you. Aye. Okay, we have some second reading items starting with 1150.
Authorize a contract with lowest responsive bidder for the construction remodel of the Schmier Pump Station Upgrade Project number E07448 for $1,800,000.
Roll call, please.
Novick.
Commissioner Fish, I'm very glad that you are reconstructing the Schmier Pump Station. I have to say that I'm rather alarmed that BES ever thought it was a good idea to build a pump station out of cream cheese, but I'm confident that under your leadership, all pump stations will be built out of more reliable materials. Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
On that point, just want to underscore that we had a record rainfall over the weekend, and it put strains on a couple of pump stations that were offline briefly. But just to put it into context, we hit a maximum peak flow at Columbia Wastewater Facility of 450 million gallons. And to put that into context, that is almost 7 times the normal flow. And not only did the professionals at the wastewater plant manage that, but we did not have a single permit violation as we were dealing with an unprecedented amount of water. There was one regrettable CSO event with a limited discharge. We're allowed a certain number of discharge because otherwise we'd have to build a pipe the size of the moon. But the big pipe investment was never, I think, more clearly demonstrated to be valuable than over the weekend, because we managed record levels of stormwater. And I want to thank the BES team for their great service. Aye.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, 11:51.
3 million gallons a day.
Authorize a contract with the lowest responsive bidder for construction of the Powell Sewer Rehabilitation Project Phase 1, project number E10475, for $10,800,000.
Roll call.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. 11:52.
Authorize a contract with Century West Engineering Corporation for professional services for the design of the Wheeler Basin Reconstruction and Green Streets Project, number E10219, for $590,872.
Roll call, please.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. 11:53.
Extend contract with Murray Smith and Associates, Inc. for the Fulton Pump Station Replacement Project in the amount of $885,701.
Roll call.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. And 11:54.
Amend Chapter 3.30 to add administrative review of stop work orders. Amend Titles 24 through 27 to add administrative appeal provisions. Revise external appeal board provisions to conform to the state building codes. Add term limits to all external boards. Delete obsolete provisions and make other technical changes.
Roll call vote, please.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you, Nancy Thornton, for your outstanding attention to detail. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Thank you, Nancy. Aye.
Hales.
Well done. Aye. Thank you. Okay, let's return to the one remaining item, which is 11:49.
Declare intent to pilot the community-initiated neighborhood trails process to allow community organizations to identify and improve and develop right-of-ways to trail standards.
Commissioner Novick.
Colleagues, at the first hearing on October 14th, council asked staff to craft 4 amendments and get further clarification of ORS 105.668, or what is more colloquially known as recreational immunity. Erica Nebel of my staff worked with PBOT and the city attorney in a memo that was shared with your offices and the public yesterday, which outlines these changes and findings. The memo is in front of you today. Before the amendments are submitted formally, I wanted to take another opportunity to highlight the amount of feedback the community has offered PBOT throughout this process. It continues to be my hope that everyone stays engaged, because everybody's feedback is continued. And trails advocates who showed up 2 weeks ago for taking the time to testify, including but not limited to Southwest Trails for their volume of feedback, which PBOT has considered. And I want to thank the residents and trails advocates who showed up 2 weeks ago for taking the time to testify, including but not limited to Southwest Trails for their volume of feedback, which PBOT has considered and incorporated in Polar and Parge. Elizabeth Duncan, who encouraged us to take a closer look at the recreational immunity statute. Arlene Kimura for inspiring Commissioner Fritz to ask staff to craft an amendment that we'll talk about shortly. Marianne Fitzgerald for being Marianne Fitzgerald, and advocates for Baltimore Woods and St. John's. I think that this pilot process is a great start. PBOT worked hard to balance and incorporate diverse opinions to get to what was presented to us 2 weeks ago. The amendments in front of us today will make the process better. And it's important to remind ourselves that this is a pilot project and thoughtful changes can be made if the need arises. Now, as to the amendments, one of the amendments, which is referred to as Amendment 3 on the memo in front of you, has to do with the availability of information to community members who need translated materials. PBOT will work with ODI and BPS to develop a template letter to accompany outreach materials, and it will be made available to the applicant on PBOT's website. PBOT needs some role of PBOT's director in the advisory nature of the trails process. This addresses concerns about the perception that neighboring landowners would have veto power to actually craft this document, but we will be ready by January 2016 when the pilot process launches. Amendment 4 in the memo clarifies the role of PBOT's director in the advisory nature of the trails process. This addresses concerns about the perception that neighboring landowners would have veto power that came up during the first council session from community members and some members of council. So this amendment clarifies that the ultimate authority does rest with the PBOT director. I'm actually proposing an amendment to the amendment. The amendment currently, as originally stated, says that the ability to complete the steps outlined in the process will be the primary determinant in whether or not PBOT will allow a group to move forward with building a trail. I suggest changing the primary to a major, which I think further underscores the advisory nature of this process.
Second that.
Thank you.
Okay, what do you want to do those as a package?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you don't? All right, so
I am
just that
just-
one then. Okay.
So I've only just seen these amendments, and I appreciate all the work that's been done. On Amendment 4, it's proposed to add it to the end of the background section, which I'm very concerned that that doesn't give it as much force of law as having it actually in the process. And my request had been to have it at the end of the process, where where the language talked about, basically tough luck if you didn't get this done. And then I was proposing to make it really clear that no, actually this is advisory. So I don't think that having it in the background section really works. And then secondly, I appreciate the amendment to make it a major determinant rather than the primary. Very concerned that it's the PBOT director that has the final authority. Surely the commissioner in charge of the bureau has the final authority. Who should the public complain to if the director says no and there's no appeal to council? And then thirdly, it says bureau-owned right-of-ways are used. I don't think the Bureau of Transportation owns the right-of-way. I believe the public owns the right-of-way. So it needs to be the public right-of-ways are used. And really, the public should have the say in how the public right-of-ways are used. And as currently defined, adjacent property owners do have veto power.
Well, again, I don't think they don't have veto power, but changing from bureau to public is easy. And actually, I'd like to ask Sarah Schooley to address the question of the placement of the language.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'd be happy to address that, Commissioner Fritz. So we did get your suggestions to put it at the end of the document. The end of the document, as it was put on the website, is a section called mutual respect. And so we didn't feel that it was appropriate to put in that section. We were also a little concerned that because of that section and also just documents in general, people often don't read to the end. And so didn't want to put it there, thinking that a lot of people actually might not get there. And so we're hoping by putting it in front, more people would get it as part of the context of the program.
I guess my experience has been that people don't generally read the background information. They dive right into what are the steps that I have to follow. And so unless it's in the steps that can be followed.
So we could, so that mutual respect section at the end isn't actually one of the steps. And so we could incorporate it into step number 3. We could put it at the end of that step. And that's the step that involves the community involvement and neighborhood support. So we could put it in there.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Does
And then-
the language in that paragraph work for you, though, with the changes suggested?
Well, except I believe it should be the elected official who has the ultimate responsibility, not the PBOT director.
I will pass that on to said elected official.
I don't want to have any more responsibilities, but okay.
So that would be commissioner in charge rather than director there.
Correct. I mean, obviously, we all make decisions in concert with our commissioner in charge or with our bureau director, depending on which side you're on. I would like it to be really clear that there is an elected official whom citizens feeling aggrieved by the outcome of the process can appeal to.
Okay.
Thank you for
Oh.
making
I
that.
can do that.
Somehow, I don't have any of this in front of me, but I did read this stuff over the past couple of days. But I just want to make sure I understand what we're doing here. We are backing off a little bit from this is a pilot, right? This is
The pilot.
for
yes.
how long?
A one-year pilot.
One-year pilot.
Mhm.
And so the amendments that we're considering right now will allow the commissioner in charge now to take under advisement the result of any kind of a vote of neighbors.
Correct.
But it's a major factor. It's not the primary factor. And it's ultimately up to the discretion of the commissioner in charge or PBOT director.
Right, and I think one of the reasons why Commissioner Fritz suggested this paragraph and why we were, very willing to put it in is that really any community input process is in essence, an advisory process. And so if for some reason the trails process goes through and because of one step or another, it comes out a way that the commissioner in charge doesn't believe is the best use of that right-of-way, we want to make sure that, that the power and the understanding is that the commissioner in charge is the one with the final decision. And so although we believe that that responsibility was implied and also mentioned in the first draft, or what I guess was the third draft of the trails process that came out, I think this language just puts it out there a little bit more and helps clarify that responsibility.
So it makes clear that these elections are not binding in any sense of the word.
Right,
They're
that they are advisory. Mhm. Exactly.
I think the concern is where the neighbors, the immediate neighbors, simply don't want people walking past them. We heard from Trudy Raz this morning how there's a fence in the right-of-way and it needs to go. And that's, under the current voting rules, the immediate neighbors do have a certain sense of they're entitled to say no. So that, I mean, I appreciate the amendments which make it really clear that no, actually, people who live far away might want to walk past that particular property, whether that particular neighborhood says, no, this is our private enclave, no, it's public right-of-way.
Basically, what you're doing in this process, we're saying, we want people to work these issues out with their neighbors, including the neighboring landowners, but that does, so we hope people will try to do that. But that doesn't mean that the neighboring landowners have the ultimate authority.
Yes, because I think my experience has been that there is often an attempt to work with the neighbors, and when the neighbors say no, other people are like, well, isn't this public right-of-way? I have the right to be there.
Right. And it is also important to remember, if you all can flash back a couple of weeks ago to the presentation, there were 3 different options to get that community and neighborhood support box checked. And so only one of them actually was getting a high majority of 75% of adjacent property owners. The other 2 options, we were getting 50% of residents or of property owners within a quarter mile of the trail, trying to look at some broader user base. And then the third option was getting 50% of adjacent property owners along with a neighborhood association letter. So there were a couple options.
But all of
there
those are
anyway.
very parochial. They all are about the neighborhood association. When we're encouraging people to walk further distances, and plus some neighborhood associations are really, really small, we shouldn't give the neighborhood association the right to veto.
Right.
And I'm not seeing an option in which I would like to see, and maybe, this is a pilot, so we can see how it works, and I'm going to be particularly interested to see how it works on the Coronado Street right-of-way, which is so contentious. Maybe there needs to be a 4th option of the neighborhood coalition or petition of 500 people or whatever it is that allows anybody beyond that. I'm certainly willing to try it as such.
We actually had a conversation with one of the neighborhood coalitions about that, and I think their immediate reaction was, but we might revisit that in the future.
Do you want to move the amendments?
Yes.
Actually, there's one of them, which actually, Sarah, I want to make sure exactly what kind of amendment it is, because we have reference to Amendment 5, which is a statement that staff will be adding a section to the Q&A for individuals that own property next to an unimproved right-of-way that detail the benefits of having an adjacent and improved right-of-way developed to trail standards.
Yes.
One of these benefits could potentially be lessened liability as a result of 105-668, and we provided language, the kind of language that we think we will add to the Q&A. And I want to know, is this really an amendment? Are we saying for sure this precise language will be used, or just sort of advising people that we plan to add this kind of
Yes, this is
language?
advising people that we look to add this sort of language. And right now, the Q&A is up on the website, and that's definitely a living document. And so as we get closer to this process being implemented, as questions come in, we'll be looking to change around that Q&A to make sure that we answer the questions people are asking the most. But I think there was an acknowledgement that ORS wasn't referenced in the Q&A, and that obviously, as you have found out, has been a very popular question. And so we want to make sure that we have language in there and have been working with the city attorney to make sure we get the right language.
Yeah, I don't think you have to actually amend the ordinance to do that, but you can if you want, so.
And thank you, Commissioner. With your acceptance of my friendly amendments, I'm happy to vote on them as package.
Great.
So I move amendments 1 through 5 as package A.
And the corrections or revisions that we made to what was Amendment 4 that now is going to be at the end of Step 3 is the changing director to commissioner in charge and changing bureau to publicly.
And also moving the location in the document.
That's right.
Well, and then we changed primary to May.
To a major, yeah, the
Yes.
primary to a major.
Major.
Okay, so those capture the changes.
And
we
change
made.
bureau to public.
And also, we're going to move that into step
Step
3
three.
rather than in
Right,
background.
move that in from what was, it's still Amendment 4, but now it goes into the end of Step 3, right? Okay, those are the amendments. Let's vote on the amendments and see if anyone wants to testify on the amended ordinance.
Novik,
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Erica. Thanks, everybody. Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Hale.
Aye. Okay, Sarah, thank you very much. Does anyone want to speak on this item or nod in unison or otherwise
We have 5 people signed up
have people signed up? Okay.
for the amendments. John Gibbon, Elizabeth Deanan, and Glenn Bridger.
Okay.
Duncan.
May I just note that there's a time check, we may lose a quorum. Are we testifying in favor or against?
I'm in favor of the amendments. I think that the,
Is there anyone who's testifying against the amendments?
Okay,
Okay.
so we got a diversity of opinion there. Go ahead, John.
okay, I'm in favor of the amendments. As I understand it, it's going to lessen the adjacent owner's veto to this, and I think that that's necessary. I still believe that it's on a case-by-case basis, and I think putting it in the hands of the commissioner in charge is probably the best way to make a judgment on case-by-case basis. I know of the situation with my homeowners association. We have neighbors who probably would have a veto, but are completely fenced off from the right-of-way, not even affected by privacy. So I kind of have a problem with that. I also would like to see this process move forward because I don't think this solves our problem for my homeowners association, but we have something called a public pedestrian pathway that runs through our private land. And I'd like to move to some place where we have more certainty about reduction in liability if we're letting the public go through our private lands. So those are critical things that I think this process helps us with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Duncan. I testified before you on October 14th about the liability issue. I am not anti-trail, but I am anti-liability. And I don't think it's fair to put a lot of our citizens in the position that they're in today. PBOT's amendments explain the limitations of ORS 105.668. They explain the protections for new trails under PBOT's plan, but they do not propose any protections for property owners who live along existing trails, and that is absolutely reprehensible to leave people in this sort of situation. I'd like to ask each of you if you would want to be liable for a trail that is published on the city's map and that currently look like this and like this. No one in their right mind would knowingly take on that sort of liability. And this is not a theoretical problem. Walkers are being injured on these trails. A lady in my neighborhood died because she fell down a steep trail, she suffered a brain injury, and a few weeks later she died at OHSU. Southwest Trails meeting a few weeks ago, they mentioned 4 or 5 serious injuries that have occurred on these trails. When the present condition of these existing trails, with the present condition of the existing trails, the fact that walkers are being injured when using these trails should not surprise you. The important point is that this council has the opportunity to fix the mistakes of the past. Don't allow PBOT to move forward and totally ignore the hazardous condition of existing trails. This is a plan that I would suggest. Require Southwest Trails to assume all liability for existing trails. They built them illegally without permits. They are proud of them and promote them at every possible opportunity. Let Southwest Trails assume liability for them in a written agreement with the city. Second, have a city engineer go out and inspect each of these trails and document conditions deemed unsafe to the public. And third, follow the same maintenance provision detailed in PBOT's proposed trails plan at page 3. If the city engineer deems the conditions to be unsafe for the public, PBOT shall formally inform the group responsible for maintenance of the deficiencies and if they are not resolved by the time set forth in the maintenance agreement, PBOT may close the trails. But one caveat, follow this procedure for existing trails first. Don't allow Southwest Trails to use its resources to build future trails when their existing trails are in such a hazardous state. Please do the responsible thing today. Do not pass this trails plan before you today until it is amended to cover the existing trails and protect walkers who use these dangerous trails and the innocent property owners currently liable for them. Otherwise, the condition of these trails will never be addressed, and they will only continue to deteriorate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bridger?
Good morning, Glenn Bridger, Southwest Community activist. I appreciate the amendments that have been discussed here today, and as well as the additional amendments that Commissioner Fritz made, and I support those amendments. I'd like to focus on the liability topic because that is an issue of concern for all of us. I believe that too frequently liability is being used by some of the adjacent property owners as a red herring of how they say NIMBY, not in my backyard. I don't want to have people walking by here. And I think we need to not allow it to be used as a bullying technique to help the city avoid enforcing their own existing rules to clear the rights of way so that they're available for pedestrian access as required by code. I do thank Trudy Raz Frankel for her bringing forth to us that these trails are not a creation of any one organization. These trails existed as she is growing up, where she knew that she had the right to walk on the public rights of way. That was an inherent right that the public has, and that pathways or trails have been created since day one in this community. And so it is not just an issue of any individual organization, but it is a community issue. And if we can have maintenance funding, which is not in this amendment, not in the proposal, that can help on that, maintenance funding from PBOT can help overcome some of the issues that people have about the condition of the trails. So we need to move forward, and I'd like you to move forward with this amendment so that we can build and hopefully maintain trails in the future.
Okay. Thank you all very much. Others that are signed up on this item?
Don Bach and Hugh McGavick.
Double header today. That's very unusual. Commissioners, Mayor Hales, I want to, first of all, just stepping back, I think Ms. prior speaker talking about maintenance is really important. It's really important, and Trails has basically, because of the liability issues, not addressed maintenance since 2008. We have sought with the city to try to work out something to do that, and we want to continue on that basis. But just for the record, the trails were built by the Southwest Neighborhoods Incorporated Committee, which was Southwest Trails at the time. We are a total separate organization in Southwest Trails PDX. Moving to the amendments, basically I support the amendments as presented, but I have a couple things that I think are really important. Staff in their memo to you said we're going to send out this announcement when there's a trail approved or it's through the first vetting process. Because their announcement was very defective that they sent out to the existing property owners, they didn't tell them they had liability for the adjacent trails. They didn't tell them there's an opportunity, if you work with a nonprofit, to have that immunity from not suit, but whatever, the immunity process that the state ordinance provided. That needs to go out to everybody now so that we don't end up with everyone trying to close off the trails in front of their houses. Now I'm going to go down here, and really we fear more property owners will be led to do the same thing as others have done to try to close off these trails that people are now using or would like to use. Now I don't foresee every little bitty right-of-way where we're getting a bunch of phone calls saying we got to open that up. But where there are some critical ones, it's important that the people be able to have the city address these issues. Let me give you an example of one. In Southwest, we had a letter written by Christine Leon several years ago to a property owner saying that they had to keep a right-of-way open. Since then, it's been closed down by putting brush in front of it, planting plantings, and so on. So we asked the same writer of the letter, Christine, to tell us how we're going to get this back open so, as she provided in her letter, we can go through there. We got the response saying you got to go to Title 59, or I'm sorry, 29, and BDS has to be involved. So we went to BDS, asked them to get involved. They went out and posted it. And then lo and behold, PBOT said, oh, you can't post it. It's not a legal trail because it hasn't gone through the trail process. Well, if you look at the ordinance, which I quoted in my note that I gave you, it's very clear that says these will remain open to the public unless specifically authorized by permit or ordinance to do otherwise. Now, I don't think there's any way that the permits says, there's no permits out there that says you can't do this. So PBOT's sort of making the law on their own, saying, no, we're not going to do that. And that bothers us a lot. And it's causing conflicts within the neighborhood. What I'd like to see, send this note out to everybody saying, this is the law. And then these are the ways the options you have, rather than just sending it when there's a project specifically approved, because it's the other ones that we're worried about. And then there's another one where they're not removing. My time is up, so I won't go on. It's lunchtime, but I'd encourage you to read it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Hugh McGavick, and I live in Southwest, and I live on Coronado right-of-way. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to be heard. It's interesting being juxtaposed with Mr. Bach because we represent completely different views in this particular circumstance where I live, which I'm not here to discuss, but it's just a great juxtaposition to conclude this lengthy process. And that juxtaposition can be stated in our instance as environmentalists versus hikers, and those needs are what this whole policy is addressing, to balance those both critical needs to the city on a case-by-case basis. I'm not going to argue the merits of anything that's happened before. I'll answer any questions that I'm given. But I do think there are a couple of changes that I would like to see made to address the amendments. First, Commissioner Fritz, with due respect, I think it's a bad idea to put more weight on yours and your colleagues' busy shoulders. I think it should be a decision by the head of PBOT. And it leave you out of this already highly politicized arena. I suggest you revisit that and go back to as was written coming in. Second, the immunity amendment is written by the very capable Sarah Schooley, who's done a brilliant job throughout and has interacted very well with everyone who has wanted her here and many who she would rather not. But she stated it as a recommendation that staff recommends this language. I don't see what I'd like to see there. What I would like to see is I would like to plug this recommended language in under immunity for certain landowners. Right now, as drafted, there are many kudos to Southwest Trails for brilliantly getting this legislation passed and misrepresentations about what it accomplishes. The new language that staff recommends is more in line with the legal memo that Peter Fenley Fry presented from Dunn Carney at the last meeting that caused Commissioner Fish to request this amendment. This language, I think, is a more benign, more policy proper statement of law and fact that the layman could follow. And third, and finally, very quickly, the second amendment is about inspection, and that's on the last page, 8, and it comes at step 6. Right now it says, the proposed language says, the Trails Organization shall contact PBOT once construction is complete, so staff with a representative of the applicant have the opportunity to inspect. It should just be complete for an inspection, period. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you both. So, questions, recommendations. I guess I'm a little confused about where we are on the liability issue at this juncture. So I appreciate the work that's been done. I also appreciate Ms. Duncan's testimony. So, Commissioner or City Attorney or anyone else, where do we feel like we are on that issue at this point?
I'll defer to the City Attorney.
Council, I'm Ben Walters with the City Attorney's Office. So I have been working with
PBOT related to the concerns raised about the liability statute. We've tried to come up with language to include in dissemination to the public that tries to describe what the liability statute addresses in language that we hope is understandable. I disagree with some of the conclusions that Ms. Duncan described in terms of what the liability statute does or does not address at this point in time. And part of what the policy is hoping to address is that right now, at least, we have situations where work is occurring in the right-of-way. It's not being done necessarily in accordance with standards developed by the city. And to the extent that the policy hopes to get trails up to a prescribed standard under the supervision of PBOT, that does bring it into a situation where the city will assume some responsibilities for establishing standards. And if the work is done in accordance with the standards, then the city will be shouldering some of the responsibilities for those trails and taking that off of the abutting property owners and the organization that's doing the work. And that's more of a process result than it is a statement that we need to include or somehow extracting a commitment from the organization for prior work that was performed. Any questions?
Okay, I think that's helpful.
So the suggestion Ms. Duncan made about having the city engineer inspect existing trails, or what? Any thoughts on that?
Do I have any thoughts on that? I suppose, well, right now at least, we have a complaint-driven process where if people have concerns about the condition of the trails, then they can submit those to BDS, and BDS would coordinate with PBOT on whether or not the conditions necessitate some correction.
So it's complaint-driven right now?
Complaint-driven basis, yeah.
So maybe not today, but sometime soon. I guess I'd like just a tutorial about scenarios in which there would be an injury, who ends up with the liability. I still hear that.
Well, frankly, that's going to depend on the circumstances of each case. The liability will be resolved on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
The statute affords some significant protection for abutting property owners as it stands right now.
We think.
Well, we think, yes. I mean,
Perhaps this is a discussion that we should be looking at in our legislative agenda if we need to toughen it up. The statute only applies to cities over 500,000, which is us. So perhaps it might be something that we could get some tweaks if necessary.
well, the statute allows cities below 500,000 to opt in if they choose to.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Other questions for Mr. Walters? And let's see, where are we with this? This was a previous agenda item, so it's been amended. Was it?
It's a resolution.
It's a resolution.
Resolution, you can vote on it today.
So it's now an amended resolution. Okay, so we can take action on it today. So further discussion? Roll call.
Novick?
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Erica. Thanks to Southwest Trails. Thanks to Marianne. Thanks to everybody who participated in this process. Thank you, John. God bless you, Mr. Stormwater. So again, this is a pilot. We'll try it out for a while. We'll monitor how it's going. We'll see how it works. I hope it works well. Aye.
Fritz?
Well, I appreciate hearing all of the concerns on all sides. And as Commissioner Novick said, this is a pilot. Sarah Scully, I've been really impressed with the work that you've done on this. And when you have people on all sides who disagree with each other quite a lot, but they all agree that you have done a great job, that's very telling. And I very much appreciate your work. Aye.
Saltzman?
Well, to be the third one to underscore, it's a pilot. So I do look forward to careful evaluation. I think our goal is we want to advance the creation of trails in Southwest and throughout the city as alternatives to getting from point A to point B. And we want to make sure that, liability issues that I think we want to resolve the concerns adjacent property owners have about liability, but not at the same token to give absolute veto power to adjacent property owners. I don't think that would be a chilling impact on any trails happening, in my opinion. So we need to do this pilot, and I think we need to further, figure out what the options are, and make sure people know if they are adjacent to a trail they feel is unsafe, that they do know there are channels that they can bring their complaints to. And certainly as the commissioner in charge of BDS, I'll make sure that channel's working. And so I think this is a great pilot. I do want to make sure that it doesn't stifle trail creation. Aye.
Else.
Well, it's a social experiment under hopefully adult supervision by the city of Portland. And I'm committed to making it work. I don't want to put property owners at risk, and hopefully the legislative protections that we have assured that. But I take your point, Commissioner Fritz, about we need to go back to the legislature and make it stronger. We should do just that. But let's go forward with the pilot project and see. Aye. Thank you all very much. We are recessed for 1 hour until 2 p.m.